Good evening. My name is David Eagle. I am the pro tem chair for the Bill DePetrie's project and the review of that. And but first, we're going to do some, if it's okay with the DePetrie group, we just like a minute to. We have to do a little bit of housekeeping here. We're going to talk about reorganizing our board and reconfiguring the chairmanship on a going forward basis, not to be confused. I don't want people to be confused about the Park Central project. This is for the board going forward until the fiscal year, which is June 30th. So, would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we continue Park Central for the next 10 minutes. So we can do this other discussion first.
Okay. Second?
I guess I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion about that?
I'm in favor of it.
Okay, all right, all in favor of
Aye.
10 minutes? Okay. All right, so let's talk about the chairmanship. Anyone?
Make a motion
When
to
I'll-
open the meeting for that.
Yep, I'm going to open the meeting, and I'm going to make a motion that we have Andrew be our chairman for the next, basically to the remaining part of our fiscal year, which is June 30th.
We talked about this before, and Andrew agreed, so I would make a motion that we appoint Andrew Dennington as chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals until the end of the fiscal year of June 31st, 1917.
Yep,
Okay?
June 30th, I think. It's 30 days. Yep.
17?
Yep. Do we have a second?
Second.
I think he proposed, right.
Motion, okay.
And Craig seconded it. Any discussion?
Just question,
Sure.
At our last meeting, we had mentioned that we were going to discuss this at our next full meeting in September. Is it okay to do it at this meeting, or?
Yeah, I think it would give a little bit more continuity to the board on a going forward basis if we settled it tonight, and that way, people that need to plan accordingly for future projects, they'll know the sort of the chain of command and who they would have to talk to.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's okay to do it tonight,
Yeah.
since we,
Well, yeah, because it was listed in the posted note that Karen
okay.
put down in other business. Any other discussion about it?
Andrew, do you have any questions or anything?
I don't have any questions now.
Okay,
Been
so
long enough.
let's have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
What was that vote for?
that was a vote to,
Oh, yes, I have
for
that,
Andrew.
yeah.
Okay, all right, so,
Bartolini, and then seconded by...
by Craig,
Yeah.
and he's been voted in. Now, we need to also discuss voting a clerk, which would be someone that would be almost like a second in charge, someone that would stand in for the chairman on nights that the chairman wasn't available, and could run the meeting. So do we have any people that would like to nominate someone, or?
I'd like to nominate Lee Bartolini to be the clerk or the vice chairman, what have you.
Do we have a second in that?
Even though I, agreed to step down as chairman, I guess if the board wanted, I would be clerk for the board.
David, on one thing you said, I just want to make a point of clarification that the board's, there are rules and regulations that deal with.
Andrew, I think your mic.
I don't necessarily agree with how you describe the role of the clerk, because there are, the ZBA's rules and regulations.
Yes.
They have an acting chairman position, and
Town council, could you do a clarification on what the role of the clerk would be?
I'd be glad to. There are only two positions recognized under state statute for the configuration of a zoning board of appeals. One is a chairman and one is a clerk. The clerk's responsibility is more ministerial and it's historic. There have been additional personnel added to Zoning Board of Appeals, especially in town, so that is not the equivalent of standing in for the chairman. Because under your rules and regulations, the regs recognize that the chairman, in the chairman's discretion, if the chairman cannot act, can appoint an acting chairman, or what I call historically a chairman pro tem. I should also report to you that upon my scrutiny of the state statute, the local bylaw, and the rules and regulations, there is no position known as a vice chair. And as I have pointed out to the board previously, there's no such thing as a co-chair. So the two positions to fill this evening are chairman, which you've done, and clerk, who has those ministerial responsibilities, but not the responsibilities of a chairman.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question for that, Mr. Cipriano, is the fact that when we have a public hearing and we're having a couple of meetings, and the night of that public hearing and the chair member is not here that night, then the clerk would then run that meeting. I mean, that's been done for the last 10 or 15 years.
My advice to you going forward tonight is that that not happen.
What do you mean?
My advice to you tonight is that the clerk not conduct the hearing.
So what happens when we have these meetings? We have to cancel them all?
No, the chairman will make the decision as to who will act in his stead if you read the rules and regulations.
It's up to the discretion of the chairman. It could be any member of the board could act, and it could switch from event to event, from situation to situation.
That is correct.
Right.
That is the concept of the chairman pro tem or the acting chairman.
Okay.
If the chairman is not here, how does he have to be here to say who's going to be, or can that be done remotely?
Well, it's not a remote decision. The regulations are saying that he can appoint or he can pick an acting chairperson. So the hope would be that if the chairman at the time knows that he's not going to be there, then he will be able to conduct that in an official meeting. But if there's an emergency or any kind of a situation, then he can call in who the chairman pro tem is of the night, without further action of the board.
Okay,
All right.
so an event, stuck on the train or whatever,
We'll make an
abducted by aliens.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor to nominate Lee, and I asked for a second. Did we get a second? I don't believe we have gotten a second yet. Do we have a second? Then we continue on. Does anyone have any other nominations? I mean, I'd like to,
Being
I'd like,
new here, I'd like to hear what Andrew thinks as to somebody who could
Well,
do that with him and
actually, Mr. Cipriano, if you could give us some clarification, I know we're making you work tonight, about exactly what are the duties of the clerk, because I've always thought of Karen, although she's not an elected board member, as, acting in the role of secretary, but could you clarify exactly what type of ministerial acts that the clerk has?
Well,
And I'm sorry to put you on the
That's
spot.
okay. That's all right. That's my job. Historically, before there were assistants at zoning board of appeals meetings, the clerk really 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago maybe kept the minutes, submitted the minutes, kept notes, and maybe even helped make the decision. But that has gyrated over to supportive staff. So the ultimate purpose of the clerk would maybe be to, on your authority, to maybe sign some document or to submit something based upon the vote of the board, or if necessary in a judicial proceeding, for evidentiary purposes, to true attest an action of the board, an exhibit of which they were a part. And that's actually a compelling judicial responsibility which has not changed.
Thank you.
okay, so Craig had asked you for some feedback on Maybe someone that you might want to suggest, or maybe want to,
Craig, would you be interested in serving as the clerk?
or you want to make a motion?
Well, I'd first be interested in whether he's interested in the clerk position.
Okay. Sounds like it's pretty symbolic.
Yeah, no, actually, and since I probably have the longest term here going forward as the newest member, that might make sense, because I'll have history going forward, so.
Okay, so I nominate Craig. How's that? I'll nominate Craig to be the clerk. And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Okay. Okay, so that is over. So now we'd like to, do you want to read that?
I'll just read it.
Okay, all right, so Karen has, I don't believe anyone from, so now we're going to reopen.
I'll make a motion that we reopen the public hearing for Park Central.
Okay.
I'll
And
second that.
second that?
Before we vote on that, and go to this other lengthy matter, I'm thinking ahead to our next meeting and the things that we'll be addressing there. I had a couple kind of housekeeping matters. I don't know if you want to address them now or
Sure.
later.
Go ahead.
One is I think we need to vote on the minutes from our June 29th meeting. And we could do that now, or we could do that, are we having a meeting on the 24th?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah, but the meeting on the 24th is another Park Central meeting.
so, I mean, we could do it now, or we could just do it at the beginning of the next meeting on the 24th.
Were there any regular board members on the other meeting?
Excuse me, counsel?
I don't mean to step in on this one, but I do want to remind you that I believe on the 24th, I will need to be discussing with you pending litigation, the public discussion of which would have a detrimental effect on the litigation. So it may be appropriate to do your ministerial matters that same night,
What is that about?
You want to do,
pending litigation.
so that's one of the things we'll be taking up on the 24th.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna have an issue with that, due to the fact that we've already set the meeting for Park Central on the 24th. These meetings are gonna be very, very long. If we need to make a meeting on the 23rd or something to do something special, I don't have a problem with, but to add to the Park Central agenda,
Well,
because it's so solid and busy right now that it's just,
all we're doing is approving minutes, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
just approving the minutes from June 29th.
it's just approving minutes.
Let's
I
do it
would have
now.
no problem, as long, people on the board would have a chance to review the minutes. It should take 30 seconds. We'll review the minutes, and then we'll go right to the Park Central.
What
I've
time are we
reviewed them.
scheduled for the
Have you looked at
24th?
What time is it? What time is the next?
We haven't set it. I blocked it out for 7 PM or later. I don't think there's
Most
time
likely
set, is
seven.
there?
Well, to say, if we have Park Central scheduled for 7:30 again, we could meet at 7, I guess.
Well, it shouldn't have to take that long, because then we'd have to wait all the way to 7:30 for the Park Central. So why don't we just say at 7:25? Could we do 7:25?
You can meet, I will meet with you as early as you wish, and I will not take up more than 30 minutes, if not less, for what I have before.
Okay, so you have to talk about the pending litigation. Okay, so 7 o'clock.
All right.
All right, 7 o'clock,
Is that good for you, Andrew?
7 o'clock?
yeah, okay. And then we'll do the minutes, and we'll also,
Is
is that,
is everybody available to do 6:30? I think, that's 24th is gonna be a very long night.
well, we've already talked about 7:30 for Park Central, right?
No, we're going to do that at the end of the
Oh, it's
meeting tonight.
not, okay.
We just booked the room. That's all I have.
Yeah, I do have a problem with meeting at 6:30, just because I work in Boston. I take the train out, and that screws up the schedule, so
All
I
right,
have
then
to
we'll
do
do
it at
All right, so we'll do 7.
Make a motion that on the 24th, that we will do 7 o'clock, and it will be for discussion of the minutes and the other issue that he brought up.
Right there.
Executive session?
No.
No,
Is
it
it
won't be-
executive?
Yes. We would take
Yes.
a vote
Yes.
to
It
go
is
into
executive session
Oh,
under the exception of pending litigation, the public discussion of which would be detrimental to the defense of that litigation.
Right, but the minutes, accepting the minutes will be an open,
Yes.
Right.
The minutes
exactly.
first, and then we'll put
Exactly.
it on
We
the
need to take 2 votes for that.
5 minutes after 7, we'll go into an executive session.
7:05?
Yep.
7:05.
Yep,
We need to
Okay.
take 2 votes for those?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, so let's go.
Okay, so, all right, let's,
I make a motion that we do it at 7 o'clock, and at 7:05, we go into an executive session.
I second that motion.
okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right. Now, we'd like to
I
make,
make a motion that we open the Park Central meeting.
okay,
Hearing,
and
second.
do we have a second?
Second?
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor to reopen? Okay, we are now reopening the Park Central hearing.
All right, I'm gonna read it.
And it'll just take a minute. There's a couple of our members here, of course, aren't going to be sitting tonight, so they'll be leaving. Right. Okay. All right, all right, so Karen wants to read something in to the minutes wants to read something into the record from the Conservation Commission. But before that, I'd like to get town council, he's got a couple words about the administrative procedure with regards to tonight's hearing going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm attempting to do is to remind everybody, the Zoning Board of Appeals, as you are citizen volunteers, the applicant and his team, and the residents at large, that it is my obligation and responsibility as town council to remind proper administrative law and procedure. Proper administrative law and procedure, and this should be in the record, is based upon decorum and orderly conduct in a continued administrative hearing. This is paramount to successfully deciding whatever you're going to decide in this administrative proceeding. Unfortunately, from what I have observed, that has not always occurred. Everyone must follow the direction of the board chair pro tem. Each person needs to be recognized and speak on the topics before the board. Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20 is in effect. And that means that no person respectfully can address the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals without permission of the chair. All persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. This is in the statute. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of the meeting of the public body at any time. If a clear warning from the chair to a person that continues to disrupt the meeting, then the chair, unfortunately, would have the ability to ask the individual to leave. If there is a refusal to leave, then there are other remedies which I don't believe I have to go into under the statute, because this is the town of Southborough, and I can't believe that it would get to that final point. This is a mutual respect of the citizen volunteers that are on that board, who serve without compensation, and who are your neighbors, and who do this for the good of the town. It's a mutual respect for whoever is the applicant, and it's a mutual respect for all of the residents who have a right to speak at public hearings in an orderly fashion so that everyone in this room can understand what your concerns are, and everybody in this town by cablecast can also understand what your neighborhood concerns are. So I'm sincerely hoping that that decorum will be maintained in this proceeding this evening, and you have to understand that you have a brand-new chairman who's very competent, but this is a new administrative procedure for him, and it would be appropriate to make it as reasonable as possible for him to keep that order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a lot easier to run a company than it is to sit up here and run this meeting, I'll tell you. But, okay, so we're going to continue on the Park Central. And I know, as all of us know, we had a lot of questions and a lot of discussion last week about traffic and the traffic impact. And we tried to address it. We tried to have the applicant answer all the questions, but certain things they weren't up to speed on because they're not the experts. They hire experts. So we decided for this week, we would spend part of our meeting, not the whole meeting, but part of our meeting, discussing any questions, that's specific questions, that anyone in town has with regards to the traffic and the traffic impact in the neighborhood. We have two engineers here, one from the developer, and Daniel, who's our peer traffic consultant, who's representing the town and all of us. So we're hoping that between the two of them, they'll be able to answer any questions that anyone may have. So I don't believe that anyone, either one of these two consultants has any opening statements, right? Do you have an opening statement that you'd like to make?
No, but Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask if the board would consider, before we address traffic, which I know which is the paramount issue tonight, this week, we've filed and served what we're referring to as the final or 100% site plans. Those site plans are dated August 15th, and they contain some changes from the April 6th site plan that was previously before the board. We've asked our site engineer, Larry Green from Waterman, to be here tonight just to enlighten the board as to what those changes are. There aren't that many of them, and he does have to leave early, and his presentation will take like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just to tell the board what those changes are. So when you're looking at these plans, okay, seeing as you had the other plans for so long, it can assist you in your review. And then after that, I totally agree with the chair that we move forward with our consultants, and they'll answer questions of the board or the public as you deem appropriate.
Okay, but, so you're telling me that the plans were changed or updated, and the final plans are here,
Correct.
and there's only a small amount of changes from all the months that you guys had the ability to update these documents, only a small, that could be made up in a few minutes?
The changes that he can tell you about in 5 minutes. He's going to essentially highlight what they are.
Okay.
Okay, so that you're aware of what they are, and then you can,
Right, so it's, all right, so it's my understanding that all the boards have gotten a copy of this, right? So
correct.
Planning Board, Conservation has received copy?
Yeah, I got
Yes.
mine.
Okay, all right.
And a similar presentation, simple presentation was made to the planning board on Monday night. So I thought it was appropriate that we do the same for this board, since you're essentially the umbrella over all the plans.
Right,
Foster O'Neill has received it also.
okay.
The other thing is, before we go forward, Karen has to read that letter into the record to start the meeting.
Fine.
So she asked me to read this in the record. It's August 16th, 2016, to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Copied the Planning Board, and it's from Beth Rosenblum, Conservation Commission Administrator. I am seeking clarification of the actual number of townhouse units proposed under the current residences at Park Central Plan. After reviewing a number of documents submitted by the applicant, Capital Group Properties, both to the town and to the state, it is unclear what the exact number of townhouse units is being proposed. In most of the submitted documents, the number is shown as 140 units. However, in the stormwater report, the number is listed as 142. Mention has been made that the number of townhouse units has been reduced by 3 down to a total of 139 units. However, if the number originally started at 140, then a reduction of 3 would bring the total number down to 137. Please clarify the total number of townhouse units and provide an explanation for the discrepancies shown in the numerous documents previously submitted by the applicant. I have attached the documents referenced and highlighted the number of townhouse units shown on each. Thank you for your assistance. Beth Rosenblum, Conservation Administrator.
Do you want to address that?
I can. There is 139 units on the final plans. It was a moving target because we were working with Concom in terms of locating the units. For a period of time, we thought there was going to be 142, and that's where -3 comes to 139. For some period of time, we thought there was going to be 140. but as it turns out, the final plans have 139, and that's the best explanation I can give, because it vacillated during this process as we were moving structures and buildings.
Okay.
And just a point of clarification, too, I earlier said that we had given this brief presentation of the changes to the planning board the other night. That's not correct. We intended to, but we got sidetracked on a multitude of other issues, and that presentation wasn't made. So I think it's even more important that our engineer just give you a brief overview of what the changes are,
Okay.
so the public can hear them as well.
Right, because my understanding is that planning board is, has a date set in September to meet with you, and you worked out you worked out the dates, so they would have a chance to give you their concerns or their questions, and you'd have a chance to respond before their meeting, right?
That is what the intent was, yes.
Okay. Well, let's hope that that
Yes.
happens,
And we
because we'd
did-
like to get their input. Okay. All right, so let's, if it's okay with the rest of the board, we'll bring up the Waterman team
Yeah, Larry Green from Waterman.
for a quick update.
Good evening, Larry Green. I'm going to give you a brief summary of the modification of the site design. In the big picture, the master plan has stayed the same, just some of the design components within the design has been modified. These modifications have been kind of a goal of reducing environmental impacts while also providing some more recreational opportunities within the site design. So to quickly first start on reducing impacts, then I'll get into recreational improvements. So in addressing reducing site design, the big picture was we reduced impervious surfaces. So any non-main road, we reduced the travel weight to 18 feet. This allowed us to minimize disturbance, minimize grading, pull the condo units and the driveways farther away from the wetlands, so minimizing grading, so less site disturbance. So this roadway here is now 18 feet wide. That is now one-way also. The aid is that, minimizing road crossings, minimize our offset to wetlands. These roadways are now all one-way as well. Everything kind of heading north, reducing impervious surfaces to 18 feet as well. Other site improvements we talked about is we reconfigured slightly the entrance here to Berry Road Extension. That modification, again, just pulling stuff away from wetland resource areas. We slightly realigned Blackthorn Extension, same, just minimizing our environmental impacts. Addressing stormwater, we're proposing to aid in groundwater recharge, so all the condos will now have roof runoff recharge. Also talking stormwater, some of the detention basins have been modified from being detention basins, now they're gonna be underground infiltration. In creating underground infiltration, we get more groundwater recharge. We also create more recreational opportunities within the development, more open space, more areas for kids to play as such. As we talked about in number of units, we omitted, there was a spur over here of 3 units, that has now been omitted. That driveway's been omitted, so again, we're minimizing site alterations in that area. To now talk on site amenities, what we've added is we've added additional visitor parking. This parking is going to be, I call it green parking. It's a reinforced turf that'll be marked off with signage, but we're providing more additional parking. Other site amenities that we've added is we've added 6 pocket parks, about 1,000 square feet in size, just for, again, more informal play within the development. These parks will be accented by ornamental grass, street trees, and some of them will have some fencing just for amenities and just keeping kids safe. Other amenities we've added is we've added 2 recreational fields up above the septic system, leach field, again, more recreational opportunities. We also moved before the basketball court was situated over here, we now moved that over here to kind of create a recreational area. Other recreational components are, actually more site design, is at the end of Blackthorn Extension, we reconfigured this slightly we changed this unit out from a double to a single just as a transition, create more buffer, create more sensitivity, and also a transition from kind of single family into single family. I believe that's all the modifications of the site design. I think that's it.
Okay, so one of the issues with someone mentioned last week was the buffer. None of the buffer has been changed as far as on the perimeter of the property?
Correct.
As far as trees and,
Nope,
you know?
correct.
there
That
was
has stayed the same.
mentioning of clear cutting, and I just want to make sure that,
There's no clear cutting,
okay.
so.
I just want to make sure, because
Nope.
it looks like there's a lot of foliage in your drawing. I just wanted
There
to.
is. We've provided a very dense vegetative buffer along the side. We also worked really hard on minimizing our site alteration to preserve as much of that existing vegetation as possible.
Okay, any members have any questions?
Just one quick, Blackthorn is still just an emergency
Correct. Yep, it's just
access. It's
emergency
not-
exit, yep.
okay.
But I assume, I guess the transition you're talking, because you'll be able to see the home.
Yes.
You'll basically see both homes.
Yes, it's more of a structural size,
understand.
going from single to single.
Got it. Okay, so, so the heights of the buildings have stayed the
All the
same.
Yep,
The setbacks off the property line are roughly stayed
all
the same.
Yep,
Okay. I know there was mention at one of the, one of the young ladies that talked last week, talked about that ball field and lighting.
there's no lighting.
There is no lighting.
Lighting.
Okay, so
Nope.
that was going to be something that we were going to discuss tonight
Nope.
if we
Just-
needed to on conditions.
Another area for kids to play.
Okay. Anyone else have any
Yeah,
questions?
The only thing is that all the issues that were changed on this drawing from the drawing 6 months ago were strictly the issues done in conservation, is that correct?
Some with conservation, some with planning
Yeah.
board.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So these were tweaks made based on the comments of the other boards?
Based on the meetings that we had with both
Okay.
boards, yes.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right, thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Let me, do you mind taking some questions from
I
the
do
audience?
not
Because
mind.
I'd like, if anyone has anything, yes, just make sure you use the mic, sir.
Thank you. Howard Rose, 2 Bantry Road. One, just a comment that I'm wondering why we need all these parks and recreation for all the kids we're not going to have at this project. But that's not really what I want to talk about today. We told there were 49 kids coming out of this project, and we have massive amounts of places for 49 kids. What I really wanted to talk about is something that's not on this plan that seems to have changed drastically, and unless I've missed a meeting, hasn't been discussed, and that's water. I believe the last time I was here, the discussion was water for this site was going to come somewhere off of Route 9, and this is the latest revised water report from the town that says we are now back to taking that water off the main water tower from Tower Road. This report is significantly incomplete, including saying that the current plan was based on estimates on pipes because they didn't have the final plan. Now that the final plan is done, I'm assuming those pipings are there, that I would request that we do a proper study of this. The places where they picked to actually measure the pressure is actually not the low points, but the higher points in the system. I'm concerned we don't have enough water from the town to do this. I would ask that a proper study be done and a significant amount of funding be put aside by the developer in case this doesn't work, as my understanding is he's responsible for making this work. The existing neighborhood already has a water problem. There's parts on the report showing that there's certain roads that are already at 23 PSI. The minimum is 20. The standard's supposed to be 40. So now by taking this entire site from that one location, there is a significant challenge that's going to be on, and the town needs to protect itself to make sure that we have water for.
And my understanding is that, that there is enough water on the site. The water is not the issue, it's the pressure. And the pressure is being satisfied by some pumps that the developer is going to pay to install.
But those
That-
pumps are taking it off of the reserve tower, and there's concern by the report that that the report was done with not their estimate and their guess on piping, and it's low enough that they made it, that it needs to be done properly, or there needs to be some chance
It
that
would
if it's
be
not
done
okay,
right.
that's done.
Do you guys want to respond?
Mr. Chairman, we've been in contact with the DPW probably over the last 12 to 14 months. We've met with the town's water consultant, Pear Corporation, and they're well aware of the project and the plans, and you're correct, there is not a water flow problem, there's a water pressure problem in this part of town. We are going to have to install booster pumps for the 2 apartment buildings Those would be located within the buildings themselves. And then for the townhomes, we created a separate booster pump building next to the sewer treatment plant. And Karen Gallagher from the DPW is aware of it. We're on the same page. Once the building is designed and we have pipe size for within the building, the pumps get sized for that. There's plenty of volume to handle it. The pump sizes have not been designed until the building is designed, and that's from Pear. They're, paraphrasing out of the report. You need to read the entire report and speak with the DPW director and Pear to understand the entire issue, which is strictly pressure, not volume.
Right. That was my
That is fair, except however, the report says that the pumps are to supply pressure to the new site. It does call out a concern that they've tested, and in my opinion, they have tested in not the accurate places. It does put a very large caveat that is the developer's responsibility to make sure that when he's done, there's still adequate pressure everywhere, including the town. I'm asking that we put away a significant amount of money to correct that, because there are points where they didn't measure where it's actually 3% over the minimum PSI, and when they measured, even at the high point, it was down 2 to 3% on their measurements. And that was with a guesstimation on pipes.
Well, let's
So-
wait to get some additional feedback from the water department, Karen Gallagher.
And that's fine. I'm just asking for a condition, you consider a condition for the report that says
We
this is.
we could consider some type of verbiage with, that we would want some feedback from them.
All right, this has already been done. It's been agreed that Mr. Petrie is going to give a piece of property for a new water tower in that area, which is going to maintain to correct the water pressure area, which was done by Mrs. Gallagher, which we were given a letter a year and a half ago about it. It's already been done and taken care of.
I thought that was off the
Petrie,
table,
you're aware
respectfully.
of, am I aware of what I'm saying as far as the water tower area goes?
Sorry.
As far as the water tower
Yeah, the-
area goes,
The proposal, right, included Mr. DePietri's proposal to provide, there were 3 sites proposed for potential water tower for the town, which are on Bill's property. As far as I know, that's still on the table, but the town has to make an election if they want it and what they would want to do with
Right,
it.
I mean, right, Karen Gallagher already has indicated that the site that the developer is willing to donate to the town is excellent. It's the right height, it would work really well, and it would satisfy the long-term problems that you're bringing up. So it basically, what you're suggesting is that the ball would then be back in the town's court to allocate the money to build that tower.
And I guess I have a challenge with one, I would hope that that piece of property is not in the open space that was, the 21 acres from this property that was designated as open space. We don't want to lose that. And 2, I don't believe the town should be responsible for building a water tower to supply adequate water to this site. That should be the part of the mitigation that comes with the site.
I get that, but, I mean, you started off by saying that, that there are already, before the site even gets developed, there's already problems with volume in town.
Well, what I'm saying, what I said actually respectfully is that it still meets minimum standards. We have water now, it's not the greatest. My concern is when you add this significant project to it, coming from that supply tower, and from the report, they had a similar thing that it needs to be properly studied. But if there is indeed a problem, the town should not have to pay to put an extra water tower in. The developer should do that, because it's fine until you add the 400 some odd units or whatever it is. So again, I would ask that as part of the conditions, that a significant amount of money, I don't know what a water tower costs, but I'm assuming it's a couple $1 million, should be put aside to make sure the town is not on the hook to cover water to cover this project.
All right, do you want to address
Yeah,
that?
Mr. Chairman, yeah. There's an issue, current issue with low pressure, not volume. The water tower or tank they have now is adequate as far as volume for the current needs and the future needs of this project and many other projects beyond this project. The issue is pressure. When I donate the piece of land to the town for the new tank, it's not because of volume, it's because of pressure. I don't need the tank on my property. I can put the booster pumps, which satisfies the townhome project and the apartment project. I'm donating the piece of land so the neighbors have proper pressure. So therefore, it's not my responsibility to build a tank at a higher level to satisfy their pressure problem. I have volume and I'm satisfying my own pressure issue with my own pumps.
Okay.
And respectfully, if we're fine now, if we need additional pressure because it's being taken away going somewhere else, I would disagree with that. So again, have it do a study.
Okay.
I'm not going to solve that tonight. I'm not a water pressure engineer. I'm just reading the report.
Right.
Please have them do a proper study and consider putting something in to cover the town, so we're not
Thank you
paying
for
for
your
it.
input.
Thank you.
Anyone have any other questions with regards to what Waterman Design talked about this evening? Yes.
John Green, 10 Tower Road. I'd like to agree with Howard. I mean, there's an obvious issue up there, and I guess all we're asking is that there's some sort of mitigation. Obviously, a project of this size has significant impact on the neighborhood. It could have significant impact, we don't know, on the water pressure itself, which is already an issue. Going back, I was the person who brought up the clear cutting. So I'm sorry, but maybe we can discuss this, but it looks to me like there's quite a bit of clear cutting that's gonna happen all in and through here. We are replacing, so these trees are on the neighbor's property line, right? The green that's shaded here, these are about 100-foot trees, right? The trees you're seeing here are 6 to 8 feet tall. So there is absolutely no buffer. It is actually being clear cut from here all the way through, all the way through. These trees are on the neighbor's property. He can't cut those, right? So we are gonna have significant impact from noise on 495, extreme significant amount of impact from the construction that's gonna go on here. I mean, I'm not sure how long this project would take to build, but my estimate from my experiences in real estate is probably 5 years. So you're gonna have 5 years of construction vehicles kicking up dirt, moving around in here. It's gonna have a huge impact on these individuals over here. And across the street, everywhere here, right? There's gonna be dirt, there's gonna be noise. I mean, I don't think anybody can disagree with that. So for what reason we need to clear cut all the way to this line to put in 6 to 8 foot trees is beyond me, right? I understand he wants to fit as many of these things in here as possible, right? But by no means should the town, say, hey, no problem, let's clear cut all the way to the line. There's absolutely not. It's crazy.
Well, I don't think he'd be allowed to clear cut all the way to the line. I don't know.
He is. He is.
No,
These
I don't
trees
think,
are
I
planted.
don't believe that, maybe I'm wrong, I believe that this town has setbacks that you are required to kind of stay out of a buffer zone.
I'd be happy to hear from you about it.
There are legal issues already on the agreement with the abutters on that.
I'm a neighbor, I'm gonna be affected by this, so regardless of a piece of paper that a few of the neighbors might have signed, I'm gonna listen to it, I'm gonna see it. There's no reason to cut down 100-foot trees to put up 6 to 8 foot trees. Just so we can fit in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I mean, you could get rid of this whole back row, and I'd feel like you have at least given the neighbors something, right?
Okay.
I think it's a real issue that you have to come all the way to the line. You gotta jam as many of these things in here as possible, and to me, it just is beyond reasonable. If you'd like to comment on where you're cutting to, what you're cutting, all of these trees that you have drawn in circles are 6 to 8 foot trees. They're not the 100-foot trees that are there. There's no reason to cut down a 100-foot tree to put up a 6 to 8 foot tree.
I think you've made your point,
Okay,
and I
thank you.
appreciate your input. And so if there's anyone else that has any questions about the Waterman presentation,
Does Waterman want to comment on what's happening on that line?
No, we have no further comment.
okay, they have no comment.
Okay, so that means that's what's happening.
Okay, excuse me. Yes, sir, do you have
I do have a question, if I may, sir.
Absolutely.
My name's Tom Gittens, 73 Flag Road, and you were talking about forcing more water into the groundwater. Will that have an impact of raising the water table when it comes down to Flag Road?
No.
Okay. Okay, so if no one else has any questions about what was specifically talked about with regards to the site plan, we could then talk about traffic and any questions that people have about the impact of traffic and any other issues. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm stuck way in the corner here. My name's John Bartolini Jr., 4 Wyeth Circle. I own the property across the street from Flag Road. I just want to mention briefly, I've met with Bill DePietri and my engineer. We have been patiently waiting for plans, which we have received now, and my engineer is reviewing them with Bill's engineer. And I just want to be on the record. I did come in late, so I apologize. But we are currently meeting, supposed to meet with Waterman and go over any drainage issues that might arise from the plans. So I just wanted to mention that. I do have one question, though, too. This is done in 3 phases. Am I correct, Bill, in saying that? It's going to be done in 3 phases?
The construction?
Right.
Well, the access road would go in first. Once that is basically at binder, we would then start the 40B, and then the townhomes would start after that. I mean, there's the apartments and a portion of the townhomes would be constructed during the same time. But it's probably a, 3-4 year maximum build-out.
Right, so as that happens, so the main road will be built first, and there'll be mitigation to hold back runoff and drainage.
Yeah, we're not opening up the entire site. Like I said, we're gonna do the access road, the 40B, and 1 phase of townhomes. The townhomes will probably be broken into 4 or 5 phases.
Okay, so this isn't gonna happen like boom.
No, like I said, it's just, 3 to 4 year build.
Right, so, and I think Mr. Bartolini's concern was if they built that access road, would they include all the retention ponds and so forth?
That's the first thing that's gonna get done, the access road and all the ponds.
Okay. Okay, so any, let's, this is the opportunity, anyone in town that has any questions, we have a couple consultants here that'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have with regards to the traffic and the traffic flows. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, before we start with consultant, I think we ought to have the consultant of Mr. DePietri start a general process of from where we were originally, and then go forward from there.
Mr. Chairman, we were not prepared to make a presentation. It was our understanding that the public had, and the board may have had questions. We've made the presentation 2 or 3 times or more, and rather than spending time with another presentation, I know that members of the public have questions, and the board may have questions, and they can direct it either our engineer or the town consultant, and they get those questions answered. Because I have a feeling, based on prior meetings, that this is going to take quite some time anyway. And unless the board wants a presentation.
Yeah,
No, that's all right.
Yeah, I think that we can move on, and, because the engineers have already made their presentations.
Yes.
So, the developers promised to make these people available, and they've brought them in tonight for your, yes, sir, can you identify yourself first?
Excuse me, you need to use a mic. Have to make sure they use the mic.
Danny, Chris, that's what we need.
Good evening to the board, all the participants. Thank you for the opportunity to address the group. My name is David Schwartz, 55 Flag Road, Southborough, Mass. And I am going to use 2 different media to try to ask the questions. I want to set a context at first, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would just ask if it's gonna be a lengthy presentation, if we can break it down into sections so he can ask a couple of questions and the 2 traffic guys can answer them, so, because we're gonna forget what he's asking. if it's
I'm
very
going to do
long.
what I can to ask the questions in a contextual manner so that the context is clear to everyone. There are a lot of people.
Right, I mean, with all due respect, I think the point is that if you have specific concerns,
I have specific concerns.
that's what you need to address.
I'm going to be
the
very
developer.
specific.
Okay, that's, because, that's.
You can rest assured.
Okay,
okay?
Specific concerns,
And-
because they're available to answer those questions.
I've got that.
Okay. go
Okay,
ahead.
we're all clear.
Okay.
To the point, I have looked at the plans that were on file here, so everything I'm saying is based on the current proposed final site plan. That's the heading for the final site plan, and the first question I have is, were you told that you were to make a right turn only onto Flag Road? And were you told to maximize the distance of that existing site structure from Flag 9 to 495 North?
Sam?
Okay, I'm sure many of you remember from back in January at the ZBA meeting. My name's Sam Gregorio. I'm the senior traffic engineer with TEC, and we were the traffic engineers for the project. I'll start with number 2. Right now, our current design has a realignment of Flag Road coming in towards Route 9, so it's more of a 90-degree angle. So based on the way Flag Road is coming into Route 9 right now, we've tried to maximize what we can based on the land that we have available to us in order to provide more space for 495 and Flag Road. It doesn't add a large amount of more distance, but what it does do is it provides the 90-degree angle for someone coming out of Flag Road to be able to see over his normal vision to the right instead of the peripheral vision that you see now. Doing that, it allows you to see at a normal depth perception instead of a peripheral vision. Therefore, you can understand gaps better in the cars that are coming. So that, well, is a safer way to get out of the turn as there is right now where it comes in at the larger angle. In terms of number 1, it was my understanding for our particular site that there was no restriction for left turns turning out of the connector road, which is, I believe, what he's getting at.
So you're saying that you don't believe there was a restriction?
I believe since the way this project has started and through all of our talks with Mass DOT and the town, that left turns were not restricted coming out of the connector road.
MassDOT specifically said that there's only a right turn that's permitted, and you've clearly made an egregious misuse of what interpretation you have by proceeding to provide a left turn and to conjecture. How do you know 15% of the traffic is going to go to the left? What if the queue length is a mile backing up onto Flag Route 9? How have you made the determination of 15%?
The turn restriction I believe you're talking about comes from a Mass DOT study that was done in 2011 for a bunch of different egress points along Route 9. What it brought up was a bunch of different recommendations that Mass DOT could look at for different places along Route 9. There was no, yes, this is going to happen, no, this will not happen. And from that recommendations, Mass DOT has put together a plan for which they have reconstructed part of Route 9 in this area by 495. And with that, that was the recommendation that was done. The other recommendations were not by Mass DOT. Their statements from that have basically said that this is the recommendation as we have built right now, as you see on the roadway right now, of what they perceive to have been their improvement. So therefore, we believe that there is no restriction they've imposed for left turns coming out of the site. In terms of the trip distribution, generally when traffic engineers, we try to make a trip distribution that's based off of the number of potential people that could come in and basically in and out of the site. I know there's been concern from the neighbors to base it off the distribution of what's coming out of Blackthorn at the moment. However, Blackthorn is a certain amount of houses that have a certain workforce going to certain places. The number of units that we have going in, there's no interpretation of where they may work yet. We don't know. They may work in Boston, they may work in Westboro, they may work in Worcester. We base it off the general, what does Southborough do usually as a whole. Our trip distribution was based off the US Census Journey to Work data, which looks at the residents of Southborough and where they work. So we've taken the percentages from there. X amount go to Boston, X amount work in Worcester, X amount work in Marlboro, and based our trip distribution on that. So what that comes out to is, based on the proximity of where the connector road is to Route 9 as compared to, say, Blackthorn or Lover's Lane or Deerfoot Road, that the more enticing route for people who live there as they move in, where the first thing they're gonna look for is trying different ways to get to different places. Their perception may not be, at the time, whether Route 9 is more backed up, or whether Flag Road is more backed up, or whether Third Road is backed up. They will try multiple routes, find out what the fastest route and more acceptable route to them is to get to where they are going. And based on the travel time runs and things that we have done for real-time traffic data, it is still faster to go towards the east, for instance, to use Route 9 going through 495 as compared to the back roads from Flag Road, Deerfoot, Maine, and coming back towards further down the line. Then that's not to say that people won't do it, and we've assumed that a certain amount will do that. But when it comes to it, based on the amount of people who would theoretically going towards the north or the east, which are the only reason why you would use Flag Road to go back up, is if you're going far south, you're going to 495. If you're going far north, you would be going to 495. If you're going to the west, you'd be going to Route 9. So what we've judged is, based on the amount of people that would be going towards those routes that could use Flag Road, is 15% of the total trip distribution, because not everybody works towards the east, especially this close to Worcester, this close to Marlborough, where there are more opportunities to go. And based on what we've seen in the trip distribution models for real-time traffic data, even going towards the north, it is faster to use Route 9 to 495, where you have actually the quick right off of Flag and quick right onto 495. Although 495 might be backed up, or it might be driving slower, their speed may be down to 20, 35 miles an hour. That's still a faster speed than people would actually be going on the side road. So the perception is it's slower, but it still actually is not. So we believe that with people who would be going far north or far, would still may be using the highway or Route 9 in both directions. We've assumed what we believe would be a conservative value, saying that 50% could be used, and that's making a large assumption to say that a large amount of the people who work in Marlboro, a large amount of the people who work in Southborough, a large amount of the people who work in the east would go north first and then go east. Now, based on the peer review that was done for this study, that was done by, at the time, Greenman Peterson, and now Tool Design Group, as Jason has moved companies from Greenman to Tool, is I think it was 18% that they had said that in their distribution that they would send 3% more. Out of the total trips that was, it wasn't a large amount of new extra trip for those particular 3%. Now, what we've shown in our different traffic studies is the 15% model showing of people going out of the site, which I believe, off the top of my head, if you include we included the redistribution of the Cumberland Farms traffic with that as well. 45 trips turning the left out in the AM, 30 trips turning out in the PM. And that's combined the development itself, and 15% of actually Cumberland Farms traffic getting redistributed for people from the neighborhood who might now be going to Cumberland Farms. So, I'll turn that back over to you.
Okay, so to go back to your original point about not having clarity around whether you're allowed to make a left turn at all, you referred to a study. This is called the Interstate 495 Route 9 Interchange Improvement Study. It's specific. I didn't make any of this up. It says no left turn onto Flag Road, specifically referencing the fact that it's a scenic road and it does not support traffic flow. So is it true that you did not model all turns to the right in any traffic study that you did?
We have not done it for all the trips turning to the right.
Thank you, Sam.
However, I would say that, again, the Mass DOT study, and this is the same study that I was going through as well, it's a recommendation for things that could possibly happen. It doesn't necessarily say it's going to happen. Mass DOT has made no hard, yes, this is going to happen for no left turns out.
So you basically arbitrarily made a decision to make a left turn in spite of the guidance that you received here.
At the moment,
is that correct?
At the moment, there is no legal bound for us to not be able to send traffic out turning a left. The Mass DOT does not own this particular roadway. The town has made no judgment to say that there was going to be no left turns out of this roadway, so we've done our traffic study based on the allowable turns that we can make on the roadway.
And the percentage split that you have is basically a guess?
It is based off of U.S. Census Journey to Work data for the people who live in Southborough and where they actually work.
Okay, so it's a guess. So with respect to your study and continuing to look at the conditions on these intersections, is it true that you were restricted from making a egress from Park Central Drive onto Route 9 because of the proximity of this intersection to the 95 northbound and the interweave model was that guidance that you received that you decided to adhere to?
Master T told us to do that physically to us, that Park Central should not be the egress for our particular development. So we have assigned the trips to the connector road to come out Flag Road. That is something that Master T directly told us, as opposed to the study, which was a recommendation that wasn't actually in writing to tell us to do a particular item.
Okay. So how do you comprehend, if I label A2 as the driveway entrance to Cumberland Farms, how is it possible that your traffic study didn't take into consideration an interweave pattern that is associated with this 3 crossover lane hotspot that's a pit stop that has substantial traffic flow comparable to 495 North and doesn't have flow through, has loading with tractor trailers filled with gas, 3 bays, only 20 spots, and traffic backs up onto Route 9. Have you taken into consideration A2?
First, I would start out by saying that there's about 7,500 cars a day that use the ramp, and there's about 1,000 cars a day who use Cumberland Farms.
Have you taken into
It's not a-
consideration?
I'm trying to answer all the
Okay.
points that you brought up. One thing is 7,500 cars using the ramp per day, 1,000 use Cumberland Farms turning in. It's not a comparable turn. We've done traffic counts on Route 9 itself by lane to tell you how many people are in each lane. And I have it right here, actually. And based on these numbers, it's about 9% of the traffic on Route 9 are actually in the right lane. So basically that traffic count was done immediately south of Flag Road and immediately east of Flag Road and west of the Wendy's. So it's basically the cars that would be generally moving in towards the lane as you are passing on Flag Road. So what that is telling me is that there's not a large amount of traffic in that particular lane at the time until they're already past Cumbies in order to move onto the highway. But if there is that many cars turning onto the ramp and the traffic count is not showing it at Flag Road, it's actually after that. When it comes to Cumberland Farms, we have looked at the Cumberland Farms and the people that are entering into it. And the study did not include a specific weave analysis, if that is what you're getting at, yes.
I am getting at that, exactly.
Excuse me, I just wanted to
think
see if
Jason wanted to say
Jason, right, I just wanted to see if our peer review had any comments, Mr. DeGray, any comments up until now on what's been discussed?
Sure, thank you. So I guess real quickly, my name is Jason DeGray. As Sam said, I've been with a couple different firms as we've reviewed this project. We did an initial traffic peer review back in 2015, which I think is a subject of a lot of the questions that have been raised here. So I do want to add a little context to the conversation about trip distribution. Sam correctly pointed out that there is a specific methodology that's industry accepted on how we do this. So this is not a guess, this is guidance, this is how engineering practice dictates we do these things. It is left to some discretion to the engineer. Essentially, as Sam points out, we look at journey to work information for Southborough, understand from town to town where they're going, and then apply the most appropriate route. That's where the discretion comes in, picking the most appropriate route given the distance between these two communities. TEC did a distribution initially for the project. As part of the peer review, we took a conservative approach and said, if we were to do this through the lens of understanding the concern about cut through to Flag Road, and we took the most conservative approach we could and sent traffic down Flag Road, what would it come out to be? That is what we did. Essentially, we said any traffic heading to the east on Route 9 that was previously part of the tech study now gets reassigned to Flag Road, essentially saying half the traffic that exits the site would use Flag Road, a very conservative number. That comes out to what was a number of about, I think, 30 vehicles using Flag Road in the evening, in the morning. And the tech study comes out to 72 vehicles in the AM peak hour under the peer review. More than doubled the amount of traffic that was going out there, and again, that's a conservative assessment. But I think the takeaway that we have at that point in time is 72 vehicles an hour is just over 1 vehicle per minute. Given the nature of this road and its classification as a collector road, that is not a volume that is out of line for this functionally classed roadway.
Is that a fact?
That is a fact. There's
Okay.
over 1,400 vehicles a day that use Flag Road. Collector roads carry up to 10,000 vehicles a day. So in terms of the nature of the roadway, again, you're going to say, okay, please, you don't believe it. What I think this audience needs to recognize is you're talking about standard practice. And we're going to get to a point about talking about what is the decision point about denying this project. That's not based out of just ambiguity. If this challenge gets challenged in a legal forum, we have to talk about what's industry standard and where are the grounds for approval or denial. So you can shake your head. I'm not putting value into the project whatsoever, but I am going to tell you the fact that a collector road of 1,400 vehicles a day is clearly below its carrying capacity.
And are the characteristics of the collector roads that you're referring to segmented in any way?
Yes.
So we need to look in, I don't want to get into the details, I think,
Well,
right now.
I'm here to get into the details.
Okay, I think I need to get more facts on my own before I hear you present the characterization. I'm not asking that question right now. I just want to know if they're characterized by type. And are you using MassDOT simulation models, or are you using a different simulation program?
I'm the peer review consultant for the town of Southborough. I'm not conducting independent analysis. I'm reviewing the work that's been done by that
Okay.
consultant.
So are you using MassDOT simulation software?
Yeah, so MassDOT accepts what a software package called Synchro. And what that is, it's a microscopic intersection analysis tool. And that looks at how each thing operates, how each intersection of parts of roadways interact as itself. So again, when we get, I'm sure it will come up, talking about the delay on Flag Road, that's looking again on that at a microscopic level without the impact of what's happening downstream or upstream. I'm sure
So
we'll
the
get to
answer
that
is you're
point.
not using the MassDOT simulation
we
software?
are. We
You're
did.
using a different program that you've been able to get acceptance for?
MassDOT does not have its own simulation software.
It's highway capacity manual software. It's industry standard. It's what's been used here.
Okay, but it's a microanalysis. So in the study area, in your traffic study, which includes this microanalysis of specific intersections, how do you incorporate the dynamic impact of a rush hour that has on the order of 32 stops for the Algonquin school bus, 36 stops for the Trotter school bus, and 35 stops for the Finwood school bus, all between 6:30 and 8:30 a.m., where a stop of a bus involves traffic stopping in both directions? How does the microanalysis that you've done consider the impact on Lynbrook, on Lover's Lane, on the best part of Flag and the connecting other feeder roads?
The analysis itself does not necessarily take into account things like how many times a school bus is going to stop. However, I would say that based on the number of stops that the buses are taking on Flag Road and other such roadways, that would only suggest more that people who live at this development may choose to go towards Route 9 and not want to sit in the traffic behind the buses on Flag Road. So what we were showing for 15% of traffic going north, perhaps it actually might be lower if they don't want to be waiting behind a bus during those times periods, and where the peak hours of the day where these buses may be going is usually the peak hour of the residential.
Okay. So when we go back to the next question, I just want to kind of take a quick look at the context so everybody has a little, as much appreciation as the people who focus so long and hard at trying to make this work. As we understand it, in the original concept, the Blackthorn extension was a distribution point for this facility. But the developer, in their effort to push traffic out of PCD in any way they could, having been stopped for an egress on Park, which we already discussed, made an agreement with 6 abutters on Tarrant Bantry, calling that the neighborhood, which by any stretch of the imagination, except for the hubris of the drafting attorneys, entered into an agreement with the developer to prevent the use of Blackthorn, but only under the condition that they would not object to the use of Flag Road for egress. I actually spoke to some of those people, and I'm not sure they knew that you were making a left turn. But the further context of you choosing to go in that direction, let's get to the other question of maximizing the difference between the two locations the intersection of Route 9 at Flag and its relationship to 495. Are you considering the distance D, the little d, to be compliant with MassDOT's goal, which they specifically told you was to maximize the distance between the current existing condition, which is actually a feeder into the lane, as Howard Rose has already pointed out, which is much easier to make an egress than a T? Is that maximizing?
Can you repeat from
Are you
about-
maximizing, is little d maximizing the distance between the Flag Road 9 and 495 North?
I believe it is, based on the land that is available to us to be able to be used, while still providing geometrically capable roadways of handling the cars, being able to turn and then turn onto Flag Road itself. Does that necessarily mean it's the furthest back against the property line? No. Because there are other options, there are other things that have to be considered based on just the land, but what is people making turns and having to go around curves and other things like that for the actual roadway geometry itself?
I think it's
Jason
important to
wants
point out too, that MassDOT's gonna put their own decision to the test here. MassDOT has yet to issue an access permit here. And if they feel that the design does not meet what they see as the best achievable design for their interests, they won't grant an access permit.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I thank you, because how many of you have read Secretary Beaton's August 12th DEI analysis of... Okay. To your point, I've received a number of comments, this is quote-unquote from Secretary Beaton. I've received a number of comments focused on the existing and/or proposed traffic on Flag Road, which is a local connector road that is also designated locally as a scenic road. Because the traffic that can exit from Park Central onto Route 9 will be limited, many of the comments express concern that the majority of the traffic from the new development site will use Flag Road. Comments from the Board of Selectmen indicate that the critical question of safety remains. And further, the FEIR, which is required and which will be challenged, I promise you, should include a discussion of permitting requirements associated with the project, the results of any pre-permitting coordination meetings held with state agencies, and how the project will be constructed in accordance with the applicable regulatory performance standards. And in that regard, I think we all need to take into consideration that this was never the intention of the developers from the outset. It was never the intention to have all the traffic spill onto a scenic road, ever. And it was also clear from at least an initial hypothesis that the accident rate at this intersection compared to 495 North using MassDOT data indicates a 6 times incidence of accidents. Now, you may have, I hope, other data that would position. Would you comment to that point?
I have it right here. I would just note that and I'll go back to his graphic. His graphic shows that there's 31 crashes between 2011 and 2014 at the Flag Road intersection. That picture is taken from a little zoomed out view of the whole entire town. When you zoom in and actually look at the actual intersections themselves, the number centered around Route 9 and Flag Road becomes 21. And of those crashes, most of them are on the other side of Route 9 across the other side of the median barrier. When it comes to Flag Road itself, the potential, I'll call the potential amount of crashes becomes 10. And I say potential because a lot of them are labeled just Route 9. They don't say actually where on Route 9 they are. They're just labeled at the point of Flag Road, which means they could be 100 feet that way, 100 feet that way. It's just that was the closest thing the police officer saw when he was at there, and he recorded that this would be the point. There was a lot of them that said things like Washington Street, which is across the way, the Honda dealership, which is across the way. Because of a C, I can't remember the name of the Coslin Drive across the way. So when you look at the Flag Road individually, it could be up to 10. And based on that, most of those crashes are rear-end crashes on Route 9, which most likely are happening regardless of whether Flag Road is there. It's just the traffic on Route 9, which is a condition that happens along Route 9 through its whole entire stretch. And this is the exact same map, exact same website. It's the Mass DOT crash portal. It's available online to everybody. If you just go, all you have to do is actually the easiest way to do is type into Mass DOT crash portal into Google. That's actually the easiest way. It's actually kind of hard to find if you go into their website. And from there, that is all the traffic data that comes into the RMV. So all towns are usually required to submit all their crash data from the police departments to the RMV, and that's what ends up on this. Same thing with all the state police crash data. There are some towns in the Commonwealth that it's a little delayed. Southborough does send their crash reports in. The 2014 data, and if I'll say a slight discrepancy from the traffic study as compared to this, and that's because Master T had released a new year of data. 2014 does not appear in our traffic study because the data wasn't released until late June. Master T releases 2 years back of data, June of each year. So this would include the 2014 data, so that may not all be included in the traffic study originally. It will be updated as part of the FEIR because now the new data is available and will be updated into any traffic study that is conducted.
Thank you. So the data was available when you prepared the revised DEIR, which you submitted on June 25th. Is that correct?
Yes, it was correct. The date it was actually turned into MIPA, but when the traffic study was submitted to the developer at the time, it was not available to us, and therefore it wasn't included in the study.
Okay.
It will, however, be in the FEIR because any update to data we are required to update in any future study that is submitted to the town or to the state.
And we appreciate that, and we look forward to that kind of trend analysis, which was specifically stated as there not being any accident trend at the point of the EENF, which was granted. Was it not the case that you specifically stated that there were no accident trends of any nature, and therefore Secretary Beaton agreed to waive a MassDOT safety study?
Well, okay, let's back up a little bit. When we say there's no notable crash trends, at the moment when we had done the data, including the 2013 data, I don't have the number right in front of me, but I believe it was 6 crashes over the 3 years of data. 2 crashes per year is not what we would call a general trend of any type of crash, because it could be the random person doing something like, I'll take Flag Road for example. There were 11 crashes that we reported back in January during the ZBA hearing. Those 11 crashes appeared in the crash study. 3 of those crashes were DUIs, for instance. Those aren't a notable type thing that we would say that is a geometric or physical trend that could be causing a problem. I'm not saying drinking and driving is not a problem. I'm just saying that when we look at things like geometry and physical characteristics of the roadway, how people are using the roadway, the physical characteristics on the side of the roadway, DUIs are something you usually would, for instance, take out.
I think the nature of the
comment doesn't necessarily mean that a geometric feature on the roadway is the problem. And when it comes to a crash study, Master T requires what's called a road safety audit, and I think that's what he's referring to in terms of safety study. Master T requires a road safety audit for those intersections or roadways that fall under the term as a HSIP eligible intersection. That's Highway Safety Improvement Program eligible, which means their effective rate per severity of crash is at a certain level for each regional planning commission, the top 5% in each regional planning commission, which this intersection is not. Usually, I believe in this area, it's usually a score around 50, and we are well below that at this intersection. I think Jason wanted to.
Well, I just want to add clarity for the audience that, one, MIPA is not a permit. MIPA, the Secretary of Beaton has any authority to waive any requirements from any other permit granting authority. MIPA is a clearinghouse of information, and they direct comments to varying agencies. MassDOT is the agency that would have jurisdiction to require a road safety audit. And I think what needs to be continuously hit here is anything along Route 9 has absolutely no jurisdiction from the town of Southborough. MassDOT is the owner of that road. They will require what they deem to be appropriate to be required, and they have not gotten to the point where they issue that permit. Until that gets to that point, all of this is, conjecture of what MassDOT may or may not require.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It is clear, though, when you look at this figure and you look at the distance of where John Boland Road will enter Flag Road, which is basically directly opposite the pad site, that it's tantamount to a direct entrance onto Route 9. You can call it entrance onto a local scenic road, but the point is simply, it is equivalent to PCD entering onto Route 9, and I would simply...
It's an indirect access permit.
It's
They're
an
gonna still-
indirect access permit, but it's going to have to meet statutory requirements. And
Well, sir,
in fairness.
just to be clear, that the point of that study, one, was a planning study, and two, was a statement of, do not allow the right turns onto Route 9 at Park Central Drive. Do what you can to maximize the distance. The implication was put them on Flag Road, not realign Flag Road to a certain degree.
Or was the implication not to put them on Flag Road? Why, how do you know it was the implication to put them on Flag Road? Why wouldn't it have been the implication to put it through, it wasn't your study, then, you know, you're not really in a position to say that.
Sure I am.
What if there was an access way that went behind Wendy's? I'm not saying that there is. What if there was an intersection at Crystal Pond Road? Wasn't that kind of what they might have been thinking? Because if I were at MassDOT and I was looking at this intersection, then I would be saying, that's what I would be thinking.
I can tell you, if we're going to talk about conjunction, what people are thinking, I know MassDOT has really no sense if they want to allow Flag Road or Park Central Drive. They're not going to get to a point where they make a decision, though, until there's no other decisions to be made except theirs.
Okay, fair enough. So we want to make sure the decision is based on an accurate portrayal of the current situation and that it represents all the data. And I think we've determined that there are some flaws in the data that need to be corrected in the context of looking at the traffic study and the microanalysis, the bus route specifically.
Yes, Jack Barron, Sadie Hut Lane.
Excuse me.
I'm not done.
I understand that, but you're not the chairman.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
He pointed to me and I apologize.
We're gonna, excuse me, we're
Thank-
just gonna wait for this
I'm
gentleman
sorry.
to be
Do you
done
want
with
me
his
to
presentation, and then you'll be available to make your comments.
Well, I
about it.
actually
Excuse
was
me.
a specific question for these gentlemen, so.
That's fine, you could wait, he's got the floor right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to keep it, so, you know, he's.
I
Mr.
apologize.
Chairman has the
Yep.
floor, and I just wanna make sure that he's got all his comments and questions out.
Okay, so we did sit on Monday night, and thank you to the town council for a, you know, very clear discussion about the questions that the planning board had raised on basically the legal rights of the ZBA to proceed with the traffic variances that are implied by the variance decision of June 11th, which incorporates the site plan and incorporates the split traffic flow. In the August 4th letter, and I addressed this to everyone, the developers, anyone who's looking at the traffic, is it a procedurally correct approach to have a Mr. Ruiz basically state in red, the additional traffic will exit the site using the proposed access, John Bowen Road onto Flag. If we do not receive a response within 7 days stating this is incorrect, then we will assume there are no objections to the statement made in this letter. Is that how things work? I don't know who's going to answer that question, but I think it suggests to me a substantial amount of arm twisting is going on here. And I want to use the word hubris because I think that is a definition we need to all understand. It's the excessive, as in great or foolish amount of pride or self-confidence in the defiance of the law.
Excuse me, sir.
Rule bending leading to being a nemesis.
Sir, let's stick to the topics. We really got a lot of people ahead of you that would like to talk, and I'd like you to focus on the traffic and any questions you have for these experts.
Okay, I'll pass the mic.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Jack Barron, Sadie Hut Lane.
Wait, you get the mic in?
Well, I have a mic here, is no
Okay,
good?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay. I talk loudly anyway, I probably don't need a mic. My question is to the board, actually, and probably, I guess, the town people. Have you, at the board, thought of asking the Department of Transportation for the Commonwealth to come into a meeting like this and review some of these things that these engineers have brought up and Mr. Schwartz has brought up so that we could get a professional opinion from the state itself who oversees the highway as it's been stated?
I think that was discussed.
The state has met with the developer and our town planner and discussed all these issues several
Okay,
times.
I'm sorry, have they met with the board? Have they met with these townspeople who are here?
We were given the information from them. We have it on record.
I don't understand. You mean they met with people other than people here and
Yes,
your board?
that's right.
So would you consider bringing them back to a meeting with townspeople like this and your board so that questions could be answered directly by the Commonwealth in regards to some of these issues?
These issues were all presently taken care of, weren't they?
Well, I don't think you'd have such a big turnout if they were taken care of.
Mr. Chairman, there were, and I don't recall the dates, but there were more than one meeting with Mass DOT in which our engineers appeared, representatives of the selectmen appeared, state reps appeared. These issues have been fully vetted. Now, in fact, a couple of years ago, regarding this project, there was a meeting in this room with DOT.
Right.
Okay, in which
I
the
do remember
public was
that.
also invited. So to suggest that there has been no interaction with Mass DOT is entirely incorrect. We know full well.
I certainly didn't suggest that.
Well,
I didn't suggest that.
okay, well, that's how I understood what you were saying.
No, I asked if the board would.
Fine, then if you
Could you
didn't
use your
suggest
microphone,
it,
please?
you didn't suggest it. But all I'm reporting is
Well, I
that
want to make sure he gets it right.
Mass DOT has been part of the process with the engineers, with the town, and with us. And we would have no objection to anybody asking Mass DOT whatever they wanted to. I mean, we're not keeping anything from anybody, but the process is well along in its way, and Mass DOT is very familiar with what we are doing, okay? And
Well, I will
Major
respond.
issue with DOT was the entrance on Park Central. And
I'm
that's
sorry, the
what
what?
they
The main
told
what?
us, that what would happen and what would happen. Otherwise, there was no other basic discussion under this project to be involved in that.
Yeah, I personally think that it would be most helpful to a lot of the people who seem very interested in this to bring representatives in from Mass DOT to meet with your board and the town folk, not just the selectmen, but the regular residents who vote and don't have a day-to-day insight into this kind of project. So that would be my recommendation, and to the new chairman, I think it would be very helpful to the townspeople to bring in Mass DOT. We pay them plenty of money in our taxes. Let them make a presentation and answer some of the questions.
The issue is that we had this discussion prior. The zoning board has no authority to do that. That's why it was sent to the Board of Selectmen, and they've been doing it. Our board does not have the authority to do it.
Just to add to that too, the MEPA process that's going on right now is the regulatory process by which MassDOT has to respond to citizen comment.
Yes, sir.
Tilla Herzeg, 4 Jacobs Lane, off of Lover's Lane. I apologize, I missed some of the previous meetings, so I hope I'm not resurrecting the same topics as before, but let's see what happens. I have two
We can
separate...
replay the tapes for you if you'd like, if you've got about 25 hours. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, let's make it 30. There are two separate topics I'd like to address. I'll pick the first one. The first one is the statistics that are presented for, we think 15 people will go to the left, 15 people go to the right, because we think they're going to go east and some west. Let me tell you the real reality and take statistics out of the equation. Take the total number of people that you think will be coming out, which I won't even argue. Could be 10, could be 10,000. I leave that to others to decide what is that volume coming out. Human nature says if there is traffic on Route 9, which is every single day in the mornings, we all travel on our roads, you pick the path of least resistance. It is quite possible that statistically, you could have anyone who wants to go north is going to come down Flag Road, go over to Route 30, pick their way up to Marlborough, and pick up 9 and miss that jumble that happens over here at 495 and Route 9. Going east, same exact thing, go down Flag, go down Route 30, make your way into Westboro. Why? There's no traffic in that direction, but there is on Route 9. West, my point was west. East, Same thing, you want to miss Route 9, we know what that looks like. Have I missed any direction? Oh, south, sure. I'm sure you can come and weave your way down 85. There is a possibility that you can statistically claim that the path of least resistance for traffic flow is to come all down Flag. So let's put statistics aside. I have 100% fact. The fact is, I am one of those who does that every single day. I work locally. I go north, just over the border of Southborough into Marlborough, and it's a mess getting onto Route 9. I won't do that. I won't do that Route 9 to 495 and sit there. So I come down Flag, I weave my way up the back roads to Marlborough, and voila, I'm at my destination way faster than the highways. So that's a fact. There are others I know in our neighborhood and community who do the exact same thing. So, statistically, you can assume a lot of these people will figure this out if they move in and say, you know what? Easier to go down Flag Road. Now, let's assume for a moment that there's some credence to what I'm saying here. Now, let's get to the other part, is you're coming down Flag Road because now you think it's the path of least resistance. Now we have the buses and the children all going to school. Now you're waiting behind buses in a long line. Impatience is a exponential cause or trend for making bad decisions. So now you have kids, now you have people walking, now we're adding impatience because now all these other folks have figured out that it's easier to go down Flag. There's a statistic that you can probably start generating is add impatience plus additional cars who figured out going down Flag Road is the easiest way to go north, south, east, and west. I think you have a safety problem. You don't have to be a statistician to come up with that one. I'll pause because I'll let these guys make a comment, then I get to the other part.
Okay. Jason, we want to hit that first?
Sure. I think that's the reason why we did a traffic safety study for Flag Road. And the recommendation that came out of that was you have no pedestrian refuge along Flag Road and Deerford Road, and our recommendation was to mitigate that. So I think that's, you know, there's obviously something to what you said that we see as a mitigating circumstance that should be addressed. I would not say, though, that that full burden falls on this developer. That's a pre-existing condition and one that's out there today that should be addressed. The other thing I would say is everybody in this room, and I'm gonna take a hard line here because this is probably 2 years of this same meeting, and I am saying this over and over again. You may not believe the numbers, you may even be right. It doesn't matter. There is a methodology and an industry standard that dictates, and that is going to prevail at some point in time. Whether it's here or whether this board denies the project and it goes back to the Mass Housing Court, which already rejected the project once as exclusionary zoning, and it gets challenged there, no traffic engineer is going to come before you and say that there is a fundamental capacity problem as a result of this project. That's just reality. You may not want to hear it, but it's the truth. And I think that's something everyone's going to have to come to terms with. Now, that being said, there are safety issues along Flag Road that should be addressed. There should be pedestrian space along Flag Road and Deerford Road. That was the recommendation of the safety study that we did as part of the peer review for this process. I haven't heard much of a conversation about how that gets advanced, but the fact that there's no sidewalks along these roads, that needs to be addressed. That needs to be addressed now regardless of this project.
I just want to clarify one thing that you said, where you said the facts are the facts, and from an engineering standpoint. But when you superimpose that onto a school thing, I don't think you have a firm leg to stand on and say, well, you know, the study says this statistic and that.
You're trying to make a position.
The safety thing will override it.
Excuse me.
You have to you cannot make the statement that you do not believe that people will not adhere to the traffic rules of the road. That's not a statement that an engineer is going to tell you. People have to be holding of their own actions. If they have to wait behind a school bus, they need to wait behind the school bus.
It was reported in many newspapers that, I mean, this is one of those silly things where we all know it for a fact and you spend $10 million to study the obvious, where they say road rage is a result of impatience.
So why are any of the neighbors driving down Flag Road today? I mean, we should just not allow cars to drive down
Well, as
Flag
I said
Road.
before, I clarified it. The more you add, the more cars you add, the more that back up, the higher degree of impatience you're going to
So
get.
address the root cause of what that impatience could do. If you have concerns about pedestrian safety out there, let's address something to mitigate the pedestrian
Well, the
safety.
nature of this discussion here is not to turn Flag Road into a highway for the developer. That's not this
No one's
discussion
suggesting that.
here.
I'm
But
suggesting
that's
you
what
add-
you're saying is in
No, I'm
order
not.
to
I'm saying
mitigate it.
add sidewalks to Flag Road and Deerfield Road. Well, I don't understand.
That's another topic for a
Okay.
different time. That's not, we're only talking about the specific safety issue. I guess you can say unless you have that mitigation in place, you shouldn't be building this thing.
Well, that is the recommendation of the traffic safety study that was put before this board.
Right, so I think the traffic impact of this site is significant because of the fact that there are no sidewalks. And I think part of the safety issues is the fact that they think they should be. The developers offered to even do them. Neighbors don't want it. So I get what you're saying. I think you've made your point. I think the peer engineer respectfully disagrees with your findings, but, you know, I think the facts and the engineering, you know, he's just speaking as an engineer based on his expertise in the field. So, I mean, does the developers traffic study fellow have anything to say about this?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before we go any further, as chairman on this, when we started this project, back almost 3 years ago now, we had the traffic consultant do the report to us. And the reason for it was, if there was a safety issue, this project wouldn't have gone forward back 3 years ago. But it was done. We hired a peer review company, and the traffic issues back then were resolved and done, and there weren't any. And it's been that way. This discussion tonight is being brought just because people have asked about it, so we brought it back up. But this thing was approved. There is no safety issue on it. The thing on Flag Road that people have to realize has nothing to do with this board. That's why it was sent to the Board of Selectmen to do what they could do on it. And back 14 years ago, I guess, when we built the school, we wanted to put sidewalks on Deerfoot Road and Flag Road. And the people on there didn't want them, and they refused them. The developers also required that he's agreed to put sidewalks on those roads presently on this project and make it better. And the residents have gone against it also. But the major issue is that the safety reports that we have by both consultants are in favor of this project, which also would be in favor to mass housing when it gets there.
Help me out, wasn't the first traffic study done in the summertime? Is that correct?
What?
Was the first traffic study done in the summertime?
2 years ago.
All right. There's no one on these roads in the summertime, so we completely discredit that anyway. So the reason we're bringing this
No,
up
excuse
is...
me, you mean the traffic report on the traffic?
The
That was
traffic
done twice, and it was done recently, too. It was done 2 different times.
Count in our traffic study were done in March.
Okay.
All right.
One more part. So I want to get to my second part, and I know others want to speak.
Yeah, others do
There were
want to
two specific parts. I addressed the first one.
Okay.
The second one, which I hope someone can answer, has anyone, what is the impact of the traffic study on Lover's Lane and Limbrook Road?
At the time that we started up this study, the study area was decided on to include Flag Road at Route 9, the area on Route 9 that goes up towards 495, intersection of Deerfoot and Flag, and the intersection of Deerfoot and Main. And that was not included as part of the traffic study as was agreed upon at the time, so.
Yeah, they were not included in the traffic study. Frankly, roads that carry less than 1,000 vehicles a day have plenty of excess capacity to handle more traffic. The objective of a traffic study is not to appease the characterization of a roadway to meet the existing character. Is there a fundamental capacity issue? And there's clearly not a fundamental capacity issue out there.
My question was, did you study the impact on Lover's Lane and Limbrook?
That's a question for.
And that was not part of the study area. That was agreed upon when we started up the study, so no.
Well, I was specifically here. I asked in a meeting, it's too long ago now to remember, where it said, will you be including Lover's Lane and Limbrook in your study? And there was a definite yes, we will. You can roll back your tapes and find it there. I'm 100% positive. And the reason for that was brought up was, it fits in with my first part, is anybody coming out of this development that wants to go north or west is going to take Lover's Lane and Limbrook as their shortcut to Route 30. It's already happening now a little bit, and once they figure out that that is a shortcut, that road is a glorified cow path, and that, quite frankly, you love it that way. But you cannot have that kind of volume. Most people pull off the road so the other car can pass. So what happened with the yes, we will study the impact of the traffic flow on Lover's Lane? That is where a lot of your traffic on Flag Road is going to go.
Okay, thank you. I mean,
I would just say that I don't recall any agreement.
I don't recall either. I mean, you know.
Neither do I.
I'm not here to point fingers, but my memory is specific because I left saying action item completed. Leo, you said, Mr. Chairman, that you said it was going to be included, and I said, good. I'll be highly interested to see what they come up with, and I haven't heard boo on it. So I already knew the answer, but I was asking in case I was incorrect.
The issue is, we don't have the authority to do anything on those roads.
No, this was when we were going to ask, the town was going to ask for its own study. We were going to include that. That was a yes to all of us sitting in here who had that concern. Yet we haven't done it. So I'm assuming this is not a complete traffic study whatsoever, since a good amount of traffic is going to divert onto Lover's Lane and Limbrook, and there's no way you could convince any of us that those roads can handle more than 5 cars.
The peer review consultant feels that the study area for the traffic study was, in compliance with industry standard.
What is that definition of compliance where
The amount of
it will be
traffic-
if you're studying Flag, wouldn't you then also study?
Less than 2 vehicles a minute does not dictate expanding the study area to such an onerous degree to basically as an end around to try to end the project.
But if we go back to what I said, that a lot of people wind up using
And we did
this
a
their
conservative.
detour instead of some will do Route 9.
I doubled the traffic that they projected to go down these side streets. It is not a fundamental capacity or frankly safety issue.
You believe Lover's Lane with additional traffic?
I believe a 1 car a minute should be able to safely travel down these roads. Yes.
That's what's going to go on Lover's Lane?
Yes.
That's your study results?
Do you drive safely down these roads? Why wouldn't 1 car more?
'Cause I
do what
live
you
there, and I
drive?
don't want to run over my own kids on the road.
These people are going to live here as well.
Sir, I hate to cut you short, but you've made your point. I think we've given you the floor for quite some time, so thank you. Yes, sir.
John Green, 10 Tower Road. A few things. I appreciate your candor. I appreciate your safety study basically saying that we need sidewalks on Flag Road. We need pedestrian refuge on Flag Road. What I don't agree with is that we need to compound this problem. Flag Road happens to be a scenic road, right? We all know that. There's no way that up and down that road you're going to get 4 feet from every neighbor up and down. You're going to cut all the trees down. It's just not going to happen. when we met with the Board of Selectmen, Carolyn Dykeman was in here, and to quote for the people that weren't there, right? She said she had hoped out of the meeting to come to a resolution, but found that it was virtually impossible to come to a resolution for the safety of these intersections, okay? So one thing that the town is not required to do is to provide a left-hand turn to compound the problem onto Flag Road. We are not required to do that, right? So, am I correct, Mr.?
I would agree, yeah.
You agree, okay. So compounding a problem that we already know is there, that we can't fix, does not make a solution. I don't know if anybody in here would agree with that. I mean, it's just absolutely, again, it's ludicrous. The amount of density of this project, the amount of cars that are gonna go left, that are gonna compound this problem, just is not the right thing to do. We have kids, we've got school zones, we've got buses, I sent you pictures of a garbage truck with a 6-year-old kid going around it about to come through a corner at 5:30 in the afternoon. It's insane. It is insane to think that anybody rational would put additional traffic left onto this road. It's insane. So the real issue here, right, is that when we go right out of there, and this is what the developer's thinking, is that it is going to be a major issue going right as well. We have a culvert that is existing there. It's 15 feet wide. Mr. DeGray, in your study, you said that it is a major issue. It needs to be widened. There is going to be standing traffic from Route 9, Flag Road, all the way back to the entrance of John Boland Drive. Standing traffic in the morning, in the afternoon, probably almost all day long. 72 cars at 3 to 4 minutes a wait, right, is what you estimated, correct? 3 to 4 minutes? And then I read in Mass DOT that it could be upwards, they can't even calculate it, correct?
Sure,
It's no different than any other condition.
Right, but
anywhere
I'm
else
just
in-
saying, there's gonna
yes.
be standing traffic from Route 9 back to John.
I wouldn't
Boland
make
Drive.
that statement, but
Would-
I would not make that statement, no.
I could follow up by saying one of the things that was mentioned in the report as well is, and again, we had mentioned it a little bit earlier, that the analysis that we do based on the Mass DOT standard to use, which is the Highway Capacity Manual, which is a federal document for how these things are supposed to be studied. It's a microscopic analysis. It looks at, for instance, the intersection of Flag Road and Route 9 individually without the impacts of anything else around it. So when you look at a delay at an intersection from there, it assumes that everybody is arriving at a constant rate on Flag Road, which is actually not a case that actually happens. There's a signal further up the stream at Crystal Pond, and what you get every time the light turns red on Crystal Pond, yes, there are cars that will come out of Crystal Pond, but the rate at which they come out of there is not the same as which they are on Route 9, and therefore there is an inherent gap in traffic. That is actually not assessed in the study because it can't be done with that particular analysis tool. Synchro, which is the program that we did use, and it's the accepted one from Mass DOT that uses that highway capacity analysis, highway capacity manual analysis, has a sister program, it's called SimTraffic, which does take into account the upstream signals, for instance, and creates the gap and sees what happens when that gap does create. That is not included in the traffic study we have because Mass DOT would prefer to see the synchro value in a study that they would receive on their own. So that is the information that we will give them.
So you're basically saying we don't have that number?
Not at the moment. I can include it as part of the FEIR when it goes in with that, the updated traffic study that will go in as part of that report to MIPA. What it will show, because we have run it, is it will show instead of 300 seconds, it's about 110. Now, yes, that is still a larger delay that would be today.
It's almost 2 minutes a car for 72 cars in 1 hour?
And what I would say is, again, on every roadway, every side street, everywhere on Route 9 is a similar condition.
Okay. So my question becomes, right, the distance between Route 9 and Flag Road and where John Boland comes out, which crosses the culvert, and the culvert's actually a little further down, I believe?
Culvert's to the north of.
Culvert's to the north of John Boland.
Culvert's to the north.
So
Okay.
these cars, Cambridge Road would
crossing
not
the
be going
culvert.
through the
Okay.
culvert.
Right, so there's gonna be standing traffic there. So again, the path of least resistance is gonna be going left. You're gonna have standing traffic that's gonna be sitting there. The road is not wide enough to get emergency vehicles down there. If we've got trucks coming in and out, which, you know, if we're gonna have an assisted living center, we're gonna have a hotel, very good chances we're gonna have semi-trucks on this road, right? There's no avoiding it. It's the only way out. They can't go out Park Central. So have you taken into account semi-trailers that are going to service a hotel, right, and an assisted living center, having to make a radius turn off of John Boland Drive, right, to Route 9, right?
The
And
peer review
passing-
made this comment. The comment was the connection to the assisted living facility and the hotel, I don't see the merit of connecting it through into the residential portion of the
It
site.
doesn't have a choice. It has to. The office park right now in the study and in the plan, the office park only has to go through John Boland Drive.
Right.
So it doesn't have a choice.
The comment in the peer review was, why are we connecting the hotel, the office park, and the assisted living facility into the site itself? Allow those to just exit on the existing Park Central Drive. Mr. DePietri has every right in the world to propose whatever he wants, but from the peer review standpoint, I'm in agreement with you that I don't see why that connection needs to be made.
For clarification purposes, we are not here to review any other proposed projects or hypotheticals
Okay,
on
well-
hotels and nursing homes,
Okay,
anything
so-
like that.
So to take that out
We-
of it, though.
You
I-
have to
even-
take it out.
But even Cumberland Farms has the right to go that way. Cumberland Farms has trucks associated with it. They park out on Route 9 all the time. They park in the Park Central driveway. They park in Cumberland Farms. You have to account for this stuff. You can't not account for it. It's ludicrous. I mean, we pay attention to what we want to pay attention to, and we sweep everything else under the rug.
Say Cumberland Farms, the existing hotel are still provided egress onto Route 9 via Park Central. And to say that a truck is going to go up towards the residence to turn onto Flag Road when they could have easily just turned onto Route 9, because a gas truck is not going to be traveling up Flag Road.
We still do have the future development, and we may not want to talk about it, but it's there. We don't have a choice.
Well, there'll be hearings for that project as well.
So we're going to say that there's no trucks, so therefore there's no hotel and there's no assisted living
Well,
center. So why are
Again, we have to focus just on this 40B project. That's what we're instructed to do. We
And to add
can't,
to the resident on, I get your point. To add to the resident from Sadie Road, in the Mass DOT, right? So the meeting with Mass DOT was with Mr. Bartolini, the applicant, right, Capital Group, Mr. Semino, and Mr. Catanzaro. Not sure who else was available at that meeting, but from my understanding is the responsibility of a scenic roadway within Southborough actually lays with the planning board, not even with the Board of Selectmen. Can somebody comment on that?
I want to correct you, sir. I was not at that meeting, and there were other people that were there other than what you're saying.
Okay, who else was there, Mr. Bartolini?
I don't know the full amount of people that were there.
I was under the
Mr.
impression-
Semino, which was basically running most of that, would have to tell you, and he's not presently here, who was there, but I know there was state people that were there, and I think Karen Gallagher was there, and I think a couple selectmen were there, and people that were at that meeting. Mr. Petrie, were you or your engineers there?
I'm aware of 2 meetings with Mass Highway. The initial meeting took place at Townhouse with Mark Purple, Karen Gallagher, the town planner,
Jennifer.
Myself, and there might have been a selectman there, I'm not sure. The second meeting took place at Mass Highway's office. There was about probably a good 20 people there. A couple selectmen, town council, my council, myself, 2 people from Mass Highway, 2 state reps. And the list goes on and on.
right, no one
The
from the
first-
ZBA.
No one from the ZBA was there.
Neither one of me. The first meeting that was done, which we set up with you, with the town planner, was the fact of the discussion of getting on Park Central onto Route 9. And that was the major issue which you talked to DOT on and did everything. Is that correct? And that
Correct.
brought the issue up for the intersection on Flag and Route 9 and everything also, right?
Yes.
No,
So
that was
in-
done.
In summarizing this, we are under no obligation to allow for a left-hand turn to compound the issues on Flag Road, and I believe that our peer review is in agreement with that. So I don't know what else to say if we actually allow it.
Yeah, I got to correct the statement. The town does not have to allow the left turn. It doesn't, it's a proposal from Mr. DePietri. But from the traffic perspective, the opinion of the traffic engineer, of 2 traffic engineers, and any traffic engineer that's going to come behind us, is that you're not going to add so much traffic via left turns on the Flag Road to be a fundamental deal breaker.
But you are compounding an issue with pedestrian safety without.
Which is why
the-
I'm recommending that this audience start to take seriously the mitigating action that is being proposed to address
It's a
that.
scenic road. It's a scenic road there. Well,
Excuse
there-
me.
Scenic
it's a-
road protects,
Scenic road.
scenic road state designation protects the removal of trees and stone walls.
Correct.
It does not It has nothing to do with
Down Flag
fundamental traffic flow.
Have you been down Flag Road? That's all it is stone walls and trees.
Right, and I'm not suggesting, that's why we suggested the speed humps.
So you
That's why we
can't-
suggested speed humps, so we wouldn't remove any of those.
Speed humps are not a pedestrian,
Sure they are.
are a pedestrian safe way?
Absolutely.
No way.
Oh,
It's a calming measure. It's not
No.
a, it's not a.
Somebody gets hit at 20 miles an hour, which is what a traffic calming device will do, they live. They get hit at 30 miles an hour or 37 miles an hour, which is the speed that the roads, traffic is operating on these roads today, they die. It is a fundamentally different
What do people
situation.
do in between those speed humps?
All right, I think we're going down a bad path.
but you
So I think,
understand, so
I
we're
I
under
get
no
your, I
obligation
get your
to do
point. I'd like to get some more, there's a whole bunch of people behind you.
But remember, we're under no obligation to go left, so.
Okay.
And I think
Thank
everybody
you.
within the town feels that way, so.
I think we
if you
should let
guys
some
can
other
go past that.
people that have been.
Yeah,
patiently waiting.
yes, I think Paul makes, excuse me.
I'd
I
like
think
to hear
Paul
what some
makes a
other
good,
people that
there's a
have been
number of
waiting.
people that have not spoke yet tonight that would like a chance, and it seems like there's 3 or 4 people that
Hey,
have,
fair enough. I own a stone wall on Flag Road, and that mitigation takes down a 250-year stone wall, okay? Number one. Number two, speed bumps were
did he not
specifically indicated as not being allowable because, or permissible, because they cannot be snow removed.
That's not true.
It's right
That's
in-
not true.
It's
okay,
written.
okay, excuse me.
It's in here.
Okay. Yes, ma'am?
Janet Sussman, One Flag Road. I just have a question. I want to make sure I understand something correctly. With the new John Boland Road, people, if they want to come into the Cumberland Farms gas station, can, instead of taking a left to get back onto Route 9, they would be allowed to take a right up through the development and come out John Boland Road to Flag Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And all of the people that work in the office park adjacent to, across from Cumberland Farms, all of those people who work in that office park will also be allowed to access the development and come out John Boland Road if they so choose and take a left onto Flag Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
Has any of this data been figured into any of the traffic study reports that have currently come before us?
Yes. So the DEIR, which is the Draft Environmental Impact Report, which I believe the certificate just came out a few days ago. And I will say the original traffic study that I presented on back in January when I was here did not include that. It is something that we added into the DEIR's traffic study in order to address the comment that was made by the residents of the town.
And the
So-
peer review consultant, just to give myself.
Okay, sorry,
a little bit of a
peer
nod.
review consultant as well. So for the DEIR, and I do a figure in here, it's not outwardly stated when you look at the DEIR, but it's in the numbers when you look at the numbers. And we do show, the way we have calculated it out is about 15% of the Cumberland Farms traffic specifically, which comes out to about, I believe it's, I can't remember the number, I have it
I
written
believe
down.
you mentioned tonight 1,000 cars
So,
come in and out of Cumberland Farms on a daily basis.
Yes, and generally for any gas station or slash convenience store anywhere, the major traffic that goes to that are the pass-by traffic that would be on Route 9. So that is to say that really the only people who would ever come out of John Bolton Road from Cumberland Farms would be probably the residents in that neighborhood. Otherwise, you'd use another gas station or another convenience store. It'd be way too out of your way to go Cumberland Farms from the other side of Southborough, come out through Flag Road and come back out, because you would have passed or gone to somewhere else. You would have passed somewhere else. So we projected what we believe to be a overly conservative amount of traffic, 15% of all the Cumberland Farms traffic, when realistically, you're probably gonna see probably at most 5, 6, 7% of it, if that. 15% of Cumberland traffic that would exit back out towards Flag Road, and we've assessed that, not just to even go in each driveway, but all the way through, so that volume would be affected all the way through Flag Road, even though that's probably not even the case either, because it's probably the residents who would be doing that. In terms of the hotel, it is hotel policy, every hotel, everywhere, no matter what the flag is on the hotel, to send the patrons of that hotel by the major route whenever possible. So unless someone at the hotel specifically asks the hotel director, where is the Southborough House of Pizza, for instance, they would never send them up Flag Road by direction. And I say that because generally, the operations of the hotel are directly tied to, for instance, online surveys like, for instance, Yelp, where a general manager of a hotel's bonus is decreased if someone gives a bad report on Yelp. And I do know this, my brother is a general manager of a hotel.
Excuse me, may I just
Sorry, go ahead,
interrupt
no.
you for one moment? I wasn't asking about the hotel.
Okay,
I
well,
don't-
I was.
Or are you
it's-
just
it's
expanding?
getting-
Okay,
it's getting
fine,
down
okay,
together.
okay, great.
So generally, we want not to see the hotel traffic, but I know it would come up as another question in a moment, I'm sorry.
No,
So we generally don't send hotel traffic on anywhere that's not a major route. That's not to say that one car may not one day go to the Southborough House of Pizza, but one car changing is the difference between a Tuesday and a Wednesday. There's a different traffic volumes every day of the roadway. Not a large amount, but the one car is not a general thing that we would assume to be significant enough to project as a change in the traffic volume. The office, which is the other part,
that's my other part of the question, yes.
the office use itself is generally a regional type use when you're at the office. So generally, the people who would be leaving an office are not necessarily working or living in the immediate area that would use something like Flag Road going north to Route 30. That's not to say there aren't any. Generally, when you're thinking about an office, you're thinking about people moving out to a further range and where they're gonna use the major route most of the time. So one of the things that we had done, and this will be in the FEIR, as we're going to expend upon what we had in the DEIR, and this was in one of the comment letters that was given back to one of the abutters in the town, is based on the same journey to work models that we use for the distribution for our site, is we looked at where the workers that are working in Southborough and where they live. So it's basically the backwards sense of how we would do the residents. So you're looking at the workforce that is Southborough. We took every possible trip that lives in Marlborough, I'm trying to think of that, half of Southborough, half of Westborough, every trip that would possibly go to Marlborough, every possible trip that would go to, it's blanking on me, but the town immediately goes to Marlborough, which would generally be the trip that would generally use Flag Road. And that represents only 15% at most of the Southborough's actual workforce. 15% of the office trips that are currently leaving right now is actually a lower number than what we've actually going to be projecting the FEIR. And I say that because the office is not fully occupied, I believe, right now, and right now there is actually not, even though with the occupancy, there's not a lot of cars coming out of the office. So we're going to be projecting out what ITE, the ITE trip generation manual says at that, on an occupancy, at that full square footage, what it would be. 15% of that number is, I believe, seven cars. We've rounded up to be 8 when we do it in the FAR. So it would be basically one new car, possibly at the most, we believe, traveling on Flag Road. And that's assuming that all 15% from all those communities would possibly use Flag Road, based on the workforce data that is available to us via the US Census. And 8 trips, we're talking about one car every 8 minutes.
Do you know how many people currently work in that office park?
The exact number of people, no. The exact number of cars coming out of the office, we can project based on the traffic volumes that we did at Park Central and at the Cumberland driveway. Is assuming that Cumberland Farms, if you go in, you probably leave in a 5-minute span. So you can project out what's actually usually coming from the hotel and the office from that number. So based on that number we felt was actually too low because it's not fully developed. And therefore, anything that we do for the FEIR, those additional 7 trips that could possibly go up Flag Road, will actually be coming from an IT trip generation manual, which will actually be more trips than if I took the count from actually the office right now.
Thank you. I just had one other question, and I believe it was at the last zoning board. Something was brought up, and maybe I'm just looking for clarification. There are 2 traffic studies that have been done, one by the developer, one by the town? No. Clarify this for me, please.
But 2 traffic studies done on behalf of the developer and 1 peer review done on behalf of the town, as well as a safety study. The traffic study projecting impacts, that's all on the developer.
So what has the town of Southborough done with regard to traffic studies?
A peer review.
And can you please
Sure.
communicate what a peer review is?
So we review all the components of that traffic study and provide comment. And to your point, the point you were talking about, the connection that possibly have cut through from the existing uses onto Flag Road, that was a comment that we made as part of our peer review. So we don't conduct an independent traffic study, essentially duplicating the efforts of the proponent. We review and ensure they were done to industry standard and raise comments of things that we think needs to be clarified and have additional questions.
So the town has employed you and paid for your services?
Yes.
Well, no, let me just clarify that. We have employed the peer review. When the bill arrives, the developer pays the bill.
May I ask why the developer is paying for the bill of something that the town is requesting on behalf of the citizens of the town?
Because why should the town pay it when we can get the developer to pay it?
Just to be
In
clear,
other words,
the
in other
town
words,
is
we
paying
picked-
my bill.
We picked a peer review company. They have no say in who we use. But we certainly don't, as a town, we don't want to pay, let the developer pay.
Is that customary?
The
Yeah, it's
standard,
it's standard.
Okay,
That's a
just-
standard.
I'm asking only out of,
Yes, I'm sorry.
1 minute. That's a standard issue. The other issue is that we had the peer review consultant do the special review on Flag Road for the Board of Selectmen. And Mr. DePietri agreed to pay for that and do that. But they did that special for the town on Flag Road and Deerfoot Road, other than what we did for the peer review. Now, when we hired them, Jennifer, which was our town planner, is the one that recommended the people that we did get and use for our peer review. Then when, at the end of it, when we went to do Flag Road for the selectmen, we requested that they do it, and that's what was done. And they did the special thing for Flag Road for the selectmen.
the reason I asked the question is because I had heard that at the last ZBA meeting, and I just wanted clarification on that, because it didn't seem quite right, and I just wanted to understand it more fully.
Okay.
Ed might-
All right,
Marchand?
Mr. Marchand, you introduce yourself, please, to the audience.
For the record, my name is Ed Marchand. I'm a Chapter 40B advisor to the board. My fees are actually paid through a technical assistance grant provided by Mass Housing Partnership and requested by the Board of Selectmen. 40B regulations require a developer to fund any peer reviews that the board feels is necessary to make an informed decision. The developer has to deposit funds in a 53G account, and then the peer reviewer is paid. The peer reviewer submits a proposal. The developer has to submit those funds to the town, so the peer reviewer is not beholden to the developer in terms of getting paid. The full amount is deposited with the town. The peer reviewer submits the invoice to the town. The peer reviewer gets paid by the town.
I appreciate your explanation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to bring up, because Mrs. Sussman had brought up a point that's been brought up a few other times, and I wanted to get some feedback from the developer on this. There's clearly a couple issues where people are pulling out of Cumberland Farms and Red Roof, and some people here feel as though that they could dump traffic onto Flag Road, be it 1 car an hour, 5 cars an hour, 10 cars an hour, whatever the number is. I've heard mentions of trucks pulling out potentially onto Flag Road. This is obviously not something that we want to hear. We don't like to see big rigs. I doubt we'd ever see an oil tanker or a fuel tanker driving down Flag Road. It wouldn't make logistic sense, but I think this is what a lot of people fear. Is it possible that the developer would consider some type of signage on that connector road? Not the connector road, but on the road coming in off Route 9. Park Central Drive, thank you. Directing and almost forcing anyone that pulls out of Cumberland Farms and Red Roof to use that Route 9, use the Route 9 west?
I mean, we certainly, yeah, I think we could, but I don't know. It could be a suggestive signing. I mean, if you're saying if you want to cut off John Boland to anybody exiting from Cumberland Farms, anyone exiting from the Red Roof, okay, I don't believe that we can do that.
Why?
Yeah, why can't you do that?
Because we were directing everyone from the office park through John Boland.
Could it be commercial vehicles?
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, we could, I mean, if
Mr.
that's.
Chairman, I think we can, I mean, that's a private road, it's not maintained by the town. We own it. We can put signs up that say, you know, Route 9 West, showing a left
Yeah,
arrow.
I think that right now, the the developer, you're not proposing any signage. People,
No,
that you
correct.
can go right, left, pulling out of Cumberland
Correct.
Farms.
Yeah.
A lot of people here, I'm sensing, are really nervous about trucks and extra traffic beyond the 40B project that will dump out onto Flag Road.
We
So-
have some of those under our conditions to do.
Okay.
The other thing is, which I don't know if many people remember it, but when Cumberland Farm was rebuilt, we're the ones, this board is the one that made them put their driveway onto Park Central Drive and took it off of Route 9.
Their egress.
Back then, their egress was directly on Route 9. We changed it and put it onto Park Central Drive.
2 curb cuts
on-
initially.
That's right,
Yeah,
eliminated the
that's
curb
right.
cuts.
Yep.
We did do that.
The other issue is the residents of the new development and the residents on Flag Road. I mean, if you're gonna prevent any right-hand turn coming out of Cumberland Farms, any right-hand turn from coming out of Cumberland Farms, you're gonna prevent people who are living, okay, in the development, living in the townhomes from going up there. So I think it's something we have to think about.
So could it be restricted to commercial vehicles even?
Well, I mean,
Well, I'd like to see all vehicles. I'd like to see signage. That would make the most sense and not discriminate. Just sort of say you can't take a right.
For residents only, or?
No, I wouldn't even say that. I mean, I don't know
What they're
how
saying
you
is
guys
if a-
feel about it, but that's, to me, that makes the most sense. That would satisfy a lot of the concerns, at least out of the Cumberland Farms issue and the red roof issue. If we
But Dave,
can-
I think what he was saying is if you're a resident of the development, you'd want to leave there and be able to go right up,
Go home.
go home.
But isn't it also designed that they will be able to come down and go out into Cumberland Farms too, isn't it? Is that not possible,
No,
right?
you'd have to go down John Bolin,
And come out
Flag, Route 9,
Okay,
into Cumberland.
That's what I thought.
So this is one, I have not heard a satisfactory explanation as to why we can't limit traffic connecting between Red Roof, Cumberland Farms, and the office park. And earlier in the project, we were talking about a keypad gate that would allow access to the residential development. You know, why this connection is causing a lot of consternation, and frankly, as the peer reviewer, I do not see the justification for why this can't be managed and mitigated.
Well, I can just touch base on a couple of things. And I believe it might have been the traffic consultant as well as Mass Highway, that they were trying to, people that were going into the new proposed residential development, it's easier to come a little bit further up Route 9, take a right on Flag Road and go straight in, versus adding more traffic on Flag and taking a left on John Bolin and going up. It was at the suggestion of Mass Highway that the office building be rerouted up John Bolin Access Drive.
Okay.
But again, to answer your question, I don't have an issue installing signs that
Yeah,
either
so
go on my
would
property.
you be open to adding that as part of the conditions?
I don't have
order
an
of
issue with that.
conditions?
Yep.
Which would say no left,
Would say no right turn pulling out of, there'd be some
Cumberland
type of
Farms.
signage that you guys would
Yeah, we would provide.
supply
Yep.
and install, and just basically say no right turn pulling out of
Farms or the Red Roof.
Cumberland Farms. Obviously, it's going to be difficult to police it, but I think
I
that,
think we'd take care of,
Yeah, I mean-
95% of it.
But like Dave, I know that exists, like where the post office is.
Yes.
And I can't think of the road that's behind it, but there's
Mount
a sign
Vickery.
there that
Right,
says no
Mount
right turn.
Vickery, right.
There says no
yeah,
right turn there.
people respect it,
I-
It
absolutely.
says no left turn.
No,
No left
no
turn,
left turn,
right.
excuse
No
me,
left turn.
opposite
Yeah,
direction.
so it's a similar thing.
Right.
So, okay, so that would be something that you'd be open
Yep.
to. Okay, that's
Yes.
great. You'll need the mic. I'm sorry, so, okay. Do you want to make one quick point, Janet?
I would like just to follow up real quickly, if possible.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's just clarify this, because I think there's some misunderstanding. If you are an employee of Park Central, are you allowed to take a right-hand turn onto Route 9 as the plan is submitted, or do you have to take a left-hand turn and access the office park through the new proposed project on John Bolin Road to Flag Road? That is my question. Does that make sense? Is
No.
it confusing?
No, I don't understand.
Enter the office park from Route 9.
No,
When you're
my question
leaving-
is if you are currently at work at the office park,
Today.
today,
Today.
are you allowed to take a right-hand turn onto Route 9 as the plan is submitted, or do you have to take a left-hand turn and access the office park through the new proposed project on John Bolin Road to Flag Road?
Today.
No.
Proposed.
Proposed based on this project. Will that change when this if this project is accepted and you are employed in the office park, will you be allowed to exit the office park via Route 9, or will you have to go through the proposed project down John Bolin Road and take a right-hand turn onto Flag Road to get to Route 9?
I think you mean,
You have to use John Bolin.
So the way this project has been presented, you must use John Bolin Road to access your employment at the current,
To exit.
Exit.
to exit.
Not to access, not to get there, but to leave.
To
yes.
exit. And as I initially asked, and I'd just like confirmation one more time, was this all figured into the most recent traffic study report?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
In terms of, but like I said before, the office for the Cumberland Farms, we assume that there would be traffic going up toward Flag Road. For the DEIR, which is the current traffic study, the office, we've assumed because of the lower chance of people being able to turn a left from, wanting to turn a left, because the office is a regional use as opposed to a residential use, that we've assigned them to all turn right out. And for the FEIR that's coming up, we will be reassigning a small amount of traffic to go up Flag Road to reassess Flag Road with that additional traffic.
But I thought there was only one way out of that office park now based on this proposed project.
Which there is. And what I'm saying is when they get to the end of John Bolin Way at Flag Road.
Okay, I'm
but they have
talking,
to exit out from the office onto John Bolin Road.
currently, if you're employed at the office park, you can get to Route 9. Obviously, there's only one way to get to Route 9 from that office park. But once this project, if this project is accepted, now those people who are employed in that office park will not be allowed to exit through Route 9. They will have to. Their only option is to go on John Bolin Road, which filters out to Flag Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I do not agree with that, for the record.
And frankly, that wasn't a condition in the traffic study that we reviewed as part of the peer review.
Yes, in the first traffic study it was, and it was added in for the DEIR, which is after that peer review.
That was a Mass Highway request, that wasn't our request.
Well, I mean, I would just say to the town, this is an avenue where comments should be made in the MEPO process. That office park has an access permit that was granted. MassDOT's got to abide by that to a certain degree. This is a request to achieve a goal that MassDOT wants to achieve, but there's an access permit granted to that office park.
Correct, yep.
Is that something that was requested of you, or did they demand it, that you force
I
this?
would, I mean.
I
you
know, it's part of the
when
whole
Mass Highway
process.
talks, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Okay. Yes, sir.
Howard Rose, 2 Bantry. First of all, thank you for being here tonight. It's appreciated. As you can see, there's a lot of questions. I have some new ones that you haven't actually heard before, so a little refreshing. Mr. DeGray, I was hoping you could comment. I believe this was required by MassDOT, this change to how Flag joins Route 9. It became almost a T, for lack of a better word. I was wondering if you could comment on the safety for my layman's terms with the new 3rd lane they've added, which in our opinion is nothing more than an extended exit ramp to get onto 495. By teeing it, we no longer have the ability to get speed with a hard right, especially if you're a truck or something. For me, it appears to be another requirement by MassDOT that appeases Route 9 but makes it extremely more difficult from Flag and much more unsafe.
Well, to be clear, MassDOT hasn't required anything at this point. MassDOT is providing input that Mr. DePietri has the pleasure of trying to decode and figure out what exactly MassDOT wants. Again, until there's an access permit put before MassDOT, nothing in writing from MassDOT says this is what they shall or shall not want. And I think that's critically important to keep in mind because, a lot of this is coming from a study done and in a theoretical standpoint for a good purpose. But when push comes to shove, MassDOT has yet officially to weigh in exactly what they want. And unfortunately for Mr. DePietri, he's left trying to walk a tightrope between 2 different interests. From the standpoint of the restriping that was done, I think it's clear that you know, what was meant to be an acceleration lane is now acting as a additional through lane. And I think MassDOT's aware of that as well. You know, from a safety standpoint, it's certainly not, you know, facilitating egress from Flag Road. I think that's clear.
All right, thank you. So I don't know what, this is obviously in the current plans, how that goes forward. I don't know what the process is to discuss that and come up with a perhaps better alternative, just like this egress from the office building. There seems to be a lot of desires put out by MassDOT that seem to be in the interest of MassDOT and Route 9 that don't necessarily benefit the town. And I hope this board would find some way to mitigate that and find a way to make this more appropriate for the town and make it safer not only for the current residents, but the future residents that perhaps may be here.
It's a tough act for our board because there are certain things that that aren't of our concern. And I know you guys kind of group it all together, a lot of people do, but the office park dumping onto John Bolin is really not something that we're have the ability to review, because it's not really part of the 40B.
Respectfully, I disagree. It goes to the safety of the roads.
Well, I mean,
it goes to the roads.
Look, our directive is pretty narrow. We have to focus
But
on,
one of your
on the
directors-
40B project.
Correct.
Okay.
Respectfully, you have clumped the 40A, the 40B, and all the roads under the 40B. Therefore, the study is required by the state and everyone else to include all of the traffic going onto those roads. Therefore, you are now responsible for that, and please correct me, this is my interpretation, but by my interpretation of everything that's been claimed under this 40B, you are now responsible for the safety of the entire site and the possible future build-out and doing it. So you are now responsible for these roads and the safety of this access point.
That's unfortunate, but that's really not true.
Mr. Gray.
You know, every town has got their own bylaws and differences, but yeah, I'm curious who has site plan approval rights in the town of Southborough.
Well, respectfully, the site plan review, I believe, was waived and is now part of this board.
In terms of mitigating the access internally and what is an appropriate egress and access point, there's some authority there. You know, the roadways are going to go in now. What that creates in terms of the ability to create cut-through to between Route 9 and Flag Road as part of the site plan review process would be something I would be commenting on, yes. In terms of a 40B project and the ability to approve or deny based on the 40B regulations, that's a different question entirely. And I think that that's, one, not something a traffic engineer should be commenting on. But from my, certainly at this point, somewhat lay perspective, because I'm a traffic engineer, not a civil site engineer, from what I've seen in the past, site plan approval would be the time to talk about access control and other means.
Thank you. So I would ask the board to readdress that and look at that for the safety of both current and future citizens. Mr. DeGray, next point. Thank you for doing the study on Flag Road. It brought up it confirmed some things that weren't in the original reports, and we appreciate that. One of the beginning things that the report, you said that one of the things that should be strongly considered was actually closing Flag Road. You said that at the Board of Selectmen
I said
meeting
that
as
at the
one of the
select, that's
options.
not in the report, and that's, you know.
It's not in the report, correct.
That
It's
question was
exposition.
posed to me as, should that be considered? And I would say at this point, it should be a topic that's, you know, vetted at the town level. There's emergency response and other implications to that from a traffic flow standpoint, and given all these concerns, frankly, dead-ending Flag Road at the culvert, to me, you know, I haven't heard a conversation as to why or why not that may be, you know, meritful. I would have no issue with it.
Okay, so to the board, our peer reviewer has made the comment that that's something we should consider looking at. That on, I realize that's a town-based level problem and discussion, but it leads to the constant question that we keep having about that access to Flag Road to the left. The state has it on their report saying it's not required, not needed. It's not needed. It is not required for this project to move forward. There is enough concern. This board strongly, I suggest and request that you consider all the different aspects that have said there is not required, not needed. Please don't do it.
Don't do what?
Don't allow the left-hand turn out of the property onto or any access from Flag Road for that direction. It should all come from Route 9 as the site was originally designed to use Park Central just back. Every report, the traffic consultant has said that's something worth considering is dead ending the road. Their reports have said it, and we'll get into that in a second. The state's report have said it. How many more times does it have to be said by how many? I've been here and you've asked for professionals to give you their opinion. This is not about traffic counts or whatever. Several reports have told you not to make the left. You've asked for that. Please put that as a strong consideration. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but Sam? Thank you, Sam. Mr. DeGray, please, or either of you, help me understand the process. MEPA is reviewing this. They issue something. That goes to, how does this move to the processing, to the permitting?
I'll take that.
So through the MEPA process, which is for the people in the room, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, it's not a permitting board, it's a review board, which deciphers through all the different parts of the state government, whether it's that apply to the particular project. But in terms of the traffic, a bunch of different agencies, but in terms of traffic, we're looking at Mass DOT. And for that matter, the town, because the town has right to comment and submit information to the MEPA office that would go to the secretary, that would end up in the certificate. We presented a traffic study to the town. That traffic study with revisions with comments or other items were introduced as part of the reports that go into the state through the MEPA process. The first part of the process is the environmental notification form. The next part, which is the part we're at right now, or at least finishing up, is the draft environmental impact report. Each of these have chapters that are specifically dedicated to traffic and transportation, which get reviewed by the town consultants, the town through whatever board happens to have jurisdiction over the traffic study review. Every town is different. And then after that, because it was a DEIR, there was a final environmental impact report, which addresses the comment from there. So for instance, on the DEIR certificate, there were a lot of residents who put in comment letters. Each one of those has to have a response and any additional analysis that covers that response in the FEIR.
So will they be responding to the second draft's comments, the one that was just approved? They'll comment on the even
In
they've
the
already approved
FEIR,
it?
we will be addressing any comments that was given through the secretary office. And on the back of the certificate, it has a list of all the people who made comments, and there's obviously
Yep.
quite a few residents. So a lot of the questions that got brought up tonight, and I'm assuming will get brought up in the next few minutes, will be addressed and commented on by us in that final environmental impact report as well.
And then once that is done, who approves it to approve the final permits? Because I guess there's a 40B permit. What other permits are required to make this go forward?
That will go through the town as well. The town will get copies of the FEIR, and they have right again to review, comment, and do what they will through whatever board has jurisdiction over that. Again, different for every town. And then Mass DOT for their parts of the roadway on Route 9 will do their full comments and any kind of designs that they want to see, any kind of alternatives they want to see. Whatever they brought up in the DEIR to comment on, we will comment on as well. And this is even well before still anything for design or anything for in paper writing for what's called a Section 61 finding, which goes over the exact mitigation that the state requires on their property for it. And then the town, through their comments, anything that they would like to see. Obviously, that's not tied to any vote or anything, and that stays with the town because that goes through their particular meetings and process they do.
And then how does it get to the 40B approval process? Because I'm assuming that's required to make this
From
done.
there, I would, they'd be more familiar with that than I would.
Thank you, Mr. Moncho.
The MEPA certificate is not required for a 40B approval. The 40B can be subject to a final MEPA. And it's very customary for, in fact, that to occur, because the MEPA process and the 40B process don't necessarily have to run totally parallel.
And does that have to, not parallel, but do you need the MEPA to get the 40B acceptance?
No. The 40B would be subject to a final MEPA determination.
And if the
Comp-
final MEPA
Again,
determination-
let me discuss 40B. 40B is an area I'm pretty familiar with. Comprehensive permits there are three alternatives that the board has. It can deny a project, which rarely ever happens because that puts the board in a more challenging position when the developer appeals to the Housing Appeals Committee. The board can approve it as submitted, that never happens, or the board can approve it with conditions. The conditions in a comprehensive permit are numerous and very often, for example, in the order of conditions, You do not have to have an order of conditions to get a comprehensive permit. It's a perfectly valid condition that says the project must receive an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. The developer is at risk on that. If that order of conditions requires any changes that differ from the plan that was referenced in the comprehensive permit, that would constitute a change. The change has to be submitted to the board. There are regulations that explain how changes work. The board makes a determination within 20 days as to whether it's a substantial or insubstantial change. If it's insubstantial, the board can approve it. If the board feels it's a substantial change, the board has to advertise and reopen or open a new public hearing. So conditions, for example, getting MEPA approval would be a normal condition in a comprehensive permit. The only involvement, there are basic steps in a 40B. The first step is a Pell. That's the ticket that allows a developer to submit a comprehensive permit application to the board. Then the applicant submits the comprehensive permit, and then the public hearing is held. Once the comprehensive permit is granted, the developer still has to go back to the subsidizing agency, which in this case is Mass Housing, and get final approval. At that time, the developer has to submit a actual financing commitment, an affirmative fair housing marketing plan, a lottery plan, and a number of other documents, and explain if there have been any changes since from the documents that were submitted for the original Pell application. Mass Housing reviews that and then issues what's known as a final approval. And really what final approval means is that the subsidizing agency is prepared to sign the regulatory agreement. There are two critical control documents in comprehensive permits. One is the comprehensive permit itself, and the second is the regulatory agreement, which dictates the requirements of the comprehensive permit, primarily in two areas: affordability requirements and limited dividend restriction requirements. So that's how it works, and the board has no role in the final approval. They will, one of the conditions, however, in the comprehensive permit is that the developer has to get final approval prior to proceeding with construction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I would ask that a condition be written to make sure that they are required to have a MEPA certificate to move forward. One last comment, and I'll let someone else speak.
Let me jump in there. Remember, the person at risk on one of these deals, in addition to the developer, is the construction lender. If any of you have been to a closing for a commercial project, you know that the lender will have a list of requirements that probably number 60. The lender is not going to advance any funding until the applicant can present evidence that it has met all of the zoning requirements and all of the permit requirements. That's really the safeguard.
Thank you. I'd still request that one of the conditions be that they have a MEPA certificate. One final comment. Going back to the reports, there were several inconsistencies in your DIR report. They're in my letter. You can go through them there. I won't go through them now. Frankly, in several of the documents, you show no traffic going onto Flag Road. Here's one of them, just in case you show. So you actually show as part of the conditions that no traffic was making the left on Flag Road in your own report. So either make it that way, or at least give it fair so that people have to do it correctly.
Those are, what he's referring to is the diagrams that show traffic flow. It doesn't actually, those aren't the volumes. So when we assess the actual analysis to assess level of service, delay, and things like that, those are attributed to the volume, and the volumes that were used in the DEIR did include the cars that were turning left onto Flag Road, whether it be from the redistribution of any Cumberland Farms type traffic in the existing uses and the site itself. So yes, I do agree that the particular figure that he is pointing to, which is a stick diagram of flow arrows, yes, seems to be missing based on what I just saw from him, the left turn onto Flag Road.
There were actually several others. Again, I'm not going to go through it through my letter. Please dot the i's and cross your t's so that your document to the state is a fair assessment, because if they're judging on that, then they should see what's really here and not what was in the current report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marnie Houlihan, 26 Clifford. I have a comment and then a plea for this board. My comment is references town council's opening around decorum and mutual respect. And so this is a point to Leo Bartolini. Mr. Bartolini, you have repeatedly jumped to the defense of the Capital Group and the proponent of this development while undercutting the residents here. In numerous outbursts, you...
Ma'am, I really would appreciate it if you focused on traffic. That's why we're here tonight. It's not, this is not a forum for this type of discussion. I know where you're going. It's really not,
I
what we
appreciate that.
wanted. We're here past 10 o'clock. These fellows are here. They want to talk about traffic. A lot of the people in the audience want to talk about traffic. If you have a specific traffic question, I would suggest you give it to them right now, because we're not going to sit here and listen to a long dialogue.
I think my point has been made. Thank you.
Thank you.
On August 2nd, I sent a letter to Mark Purple, and I copied Mr. Rooney and Bonnie Faniff regarding their meeting that was held that day. They had agreed to hold a safety meeting specific to Flag Road, as Mr. DeGray had recommended. The residents have actively pursued this. As of a response on August 9th from Mr. Purple, that safety meeting has yet to be scheduled, and I think it's important, and my plea to this board is allow the Board of Selectmen to have the safety meeting, because it's not taken care of. That's why many people are here tonight expressing concerns. So with that, I expect a response from Mr. Purple. I will forward that. I understand that has to happen from the Board of Selectmen, but that information will help you make your decision and help to build in contingencies into this comprehensive permit.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have no jurisdiction, obviously.
Shea wants to make a comment.
Excuse me?
Mr. Shea would like.
Oh, sure.
Hi, Brian Shea. Just in response to that comment, our next meeting is Tuesday night. One of the items that will be on our agenda is an update on where we stand in planning the forum that we are proposing to address the Flag Road safety items. So it is not something that we are overlooking. There are a number of parties that we are trying to coordinate to get together to be at that forum. So Tuesday, we will be able to present an update on where we stand with scheduling that, potentially identify dates when that meeting will be held, and the forum that we're planning for that meeting to be.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Karen Shimkus, Lindbergh Road. Reading a letter into the record, to whom it may concern, please incorporate this letter as part of the record. Please consider the following link from MassDOT completed studies page, 495 Route 9 final chapter 4 report. The key section is 4.2.5 on page 4-13, which states, left turns from the new connector road would be prohibited to reduce traffic on Flag Road, a narrow roadway which serves a residential neighborhood. Given the fact that left-hand turns are prohibited by the state, per the above study, which was mentioned in the footnotes in the DEIR, but not, this particular statement was not referenced in any way. And the state has rejected in concept the proposed project be able to use nearby Park Central Drive due to safety reasons, because it's too close to the 495 ramp. Why do the developer's current plans reflect left and right-hand turns onto Flag Road?
The Mass DOT study that she is referencing, 495 at Route 9, doesn't necessarily prohibit left turns coming out of John Bolton Road or the connection road, as the study references it as. It's providing several, I think, 9 or 10 recommendations for different things that could happen around this area that could solve different traffic problems for different types of issues. There were recommendation alternatives. They weren't in stone, yes, that we are going to do. Mass DOT completed an improvement project along Route 9 that settled a few of the alternatives that were in there, and that was the recommendations they decided to go with in their construction project that was directly tied to this study. The study, again, the left turns out of the John Bolton Road, was a alternative for recommendations that could possibly be done for different types of items. It wasn't a, this is what we are going to do.
This says prohibited.
Mr. Chairman.
It's prohibited as part of a potential alternative. It wasn't a,
Yeah,
this is
MassDOT
what
has
one.
no jurisdiction to make that statement.
It still says prohibited.
I guess,
Go ahead.
Why has the
Just-
ZBA,
Excuse me, just
let me
let the
shed some light on
developer
that.
address
That report is from 2011. We weren't even involved.
2013, November?
I think he's referencing that the data from it is from 2011. The final publishing date after all reviews was 2013.
We weren't involved in Park Central. At that point, the property was zoned industrial. So one would assume that Mass Highway probably didn't want industrial traffic going left on Flag Road. It had no idea what the ultimate project was going to be, which was before the town today, when that was written.
Right, and we have subsequent DOT correspondence concerning the site that doesn't mention anything about restricting the left-hand turn.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce the concept and ask that we take the recommendation of our peer traffic study expert to consider closing Flag Road, dead-ending it, as we've discussed at other meetings.
Well, we have no say in shutting down Flag Road, so that's not going to be a discussion that we're going to have.
It's strictly to do with the Board of Selectmen.
That's
us
not
at all.
our call. That's a selectman call.
Why does the town's own peer traffic review, GPI's recommendations, to gate the connector roadway from Park Central Drive not been discussed in this meeting or questions asked by the ZBA? Why hasn't
Wait,
the-
excuse me, what was the question again? I didn't catch that.
Mr. DeGray, maybe you can.
Well, I think we did discuss that here today. It was the comment about limiting access between Park Central Drive, the current Park Central Drive, and John Boynton Road to gate for just residential access. Right, and I think we did talk about it somewhat today. Obviously, there's a lot, I think, being influenced by the guidance being given by Mass DOT. But as the peer review consultant, I still think that's something that should be on the table.
Thank you, I agree completely. And if you could reflect the record to.
Park Central to the Broadway.
Also, just some notes on comments that were made earlier. That meeting with Mass DOT, that was originally brought up by Bonnie Faniff, who opened comments to the public originally through a BOS meeting. That was supposed to be a meeting for the public with DOT, and it ended up being a meeting between just a few specific individuals and with the developer. So I'd request that we have a meeting with DOT for the public as it was originally put forward. The number of crashes, I've heard between numbers 10, guessing 30, but that's all without adding 5,000 more traffic trips, so I presume that would go up. The idea of making a T out of the end of Flag is just utterly nonsensical to me as somebody who travels that every single day. I mean, you need at least a running start to get out of there. Putting in a T actually increases your chances of getting broadside and killed. Broadside meaning hit in the driver door. So and I've heard it from other residents that at least you have a prayer if you jackrabbit out and try to get your speed going. But a T, you'd
Well,
be hit.
this is something, excuse me, I think this is a DOT requirement. This has nothing to do with us requiring that T. This is DOT.
Well, we can bring it up when we meet with, the public meets with DOT. The trip distribution, 15 to 18% turning left. Now, when Route 9 is backed up completely, and the 495 ramps are backed up, what percentage would turn left?
sorry, we interpret our data by, again, industry standard of how we suggest out for this US Census Journey to Work data based on the overall most every day. There are gonna be days, there's always days where there's construction happening somewhere. There's always days where there's some other event that may be happening that could contribute to a change in distribution. The typical normal day that we usually assess for shows that we would project about 15 to 18% going up Flag Road. We generally don't ever design for the worst case, and what I mean like the worst case scenario. Otherwise, you'd have 10 lanes on Route 9. You'd have 4 lanes on Flag Road. You'd have 6 lanes on your neighborhood road if you were designing for the worst case scenario that could always possibly happen on a couple random days. We try to go for the typical normal type day that is actually happening on a normal event. I understand that there is traffic on Route 9. However, generally based on the real-time travel time data that we've gone through, it generally even says with the backup on Route 9 that it actually is still faster to go out Route 9. The general perception may be that, yes, there's more stopping and maybe going, but it still doesn't mean that the total time frame is shorter than what it would take to maybe go through Route 30.
You know, this is just common sense to me, but you're pushing an elephant out a pinhole and through a school zone, and the math doesn't add up. So if you've got 3,000 traffic trips on top of 1,000 already, and then another possible 1,000, okay, and you've got wait times of 3 to 4 minutes at the end of Flag, these people are gonna be sitting in their parking spot waiting to get out. So the math just does not add up.
Well, this is where our peer review did address this, and we, again, took the 15% that was projected to exit on the Flag Road and upped it to 52% of all exiting traffic. That introduced an additional 49 vehicles in the morning peak hour. And, you know, those are the numbers. The total would be 72 at that point, exiting in the morning. I would say that would be your worst case scenario.
Okay, again, it's just common sense, and I don't think we're going to agree, but thank you. With regard to the comment on no sidewalks on Flag and there being a recommendation, and Mr. Eagle and Mr. Bartolini said that the neighbors don't want it, that in fact, you know, is, I think, overridden by a DPW memo that said that they've looked at it many times and have said it's just not possible. So I'd suggest you go back to the DPW memo on our town letterhead that says additional improvements aren't possible.
I think clarity needs to be given there. There's clearly the ability to add sidewalk on Deerford Road. Flag Road's an entirely different case. And we've had that conversation with DPW as well.
Again, I would please go look at our own town letterhead.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I request that Mrs. Shimkis talks about the traffic on Park Central only and not Route 9 or anything else, or Flag Road. That has nothing to do with this board. You go to the selectmen's meeting on Tuesday night and discuss it with them, not with us.
And we will. Thank you. Yes. The study impact, the scope of the report, just again, my opinion, but the fact that that scope was set so narrow, not including Lover's Lane and Limbrook, based on the observations given by Mr. Herzog here, which I think are quite accurate, and I would add to that as well, I support that fully, is misleading.
Karen?
Last point is tonight's agenda actually was signed by Mr. Bartolini, who is no longer the chair. And according to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 15, regarding boards of appeal hearings, the law states, meetings of the board shall be held at the call of the chairman. So per state law, the meeting is held at the call of the chairperson. The agenda must be signed by the residing chairperson for the agenda to stand and for the meeting to be legally allowed. I'm wondering if a major procedural error has occurred, which would void tonight's meeting. Is tonight's meeting agenda in conformance with state law? Does tonight's meeting constitute an open meeting law violation, since there was no properly issued agenda put out 48 hours in advance of a public hearing?
Absolutely was. I don't know
It's signed by Mr. Bartolini, not the current chair.
Karen, when was it done?
I did it to council, I think last Thursday.
The point is the chairperson calls the meeting according to state law. I just read state law.
No, I understand that, but I guess because we have a chair for just Park Central, and then we have because technically, when it was signed, Mr. Bartolini was the chairman of the ZBA. So he had the right to sign on behalf of the ZBA for the next hearing. I don't understand what your point is. It wouldn't be me that would sign. I'm only responsible for this specific hearing, not the administrative duties of a zoning
My
chairman.
point is this, Mr. Eagle, that pursuant to the Board of Selectmen's executive session on August 2nd, the Zoning Board of Appeals was reorganized, and the then chairperson, Mr. Leo Bartolini, stepped down from the chairman role. That's the point.
No, you're
Thank you.
completely wrong. It was not done at that executive session at all.
Karen, I just need the date of that letter. And did you submit that already, or is that a new letter?
I did it before this meeting, and I have a copy.
Oh, you didn't submit it to me, though. Who'd you submit it to?
I wrote it right before.
Oh, I see, okay. All right.
But I have a copy.
All right.
Did you want to make another comment, or you're all set?
Right now, we'll let it go.
Okay, I will let you speak. I just wanted to inform everyone it's now 10:20, and so in order to get anyone that has any specific traffic questions, we'd like to see if we could not rehash the same things, and see if we can, start talking about maybe wrapping up tonight's meeting. Go ahead, sir.
Yan Huang, 75 Flat Road. So on the DIEOS table 3-2, I was wondering what's the queue length measure, and in here it says the Route 9 Flat Road has a queue length of 323 on the peak morning period, and then the evening peak period has 466. Is that measured in feet or actually in car length?
Feet.
So under this assumption that then the measurement from Route 9 to the intersection of Bowling Drive and Flag is, I think, I don't know, but I would approximate it to be about 320-something feet, 350 feet, right? Any measurement on that?
Yes, that number represents what's called the 95th percentile queue, which is the number that it's basically defined as the worst possible queue that would happen on the roadway, where 95th percentile over a 60-minute span is 57 minutes. So for a 3-minute period, the queue could get back to that length, and then it would go back to its normal length, the typical average.
So it'll be accurate. So it'll be accurate to say that during the peak periods that, in fact, the cars will back up all the way to that intersection, because the quoted queue length here is actually 300-something feet up to 466 feet.
Under the analysis that Mass DOT requires, which again I had spoke to earlier about being the synchro software, which doesn't represent anything that happens gaps downstream from any other traffic signals or other events that are happening on the roadway, that is the number. When you take into account the gaps that would happen because of the traffic signal upstream, the number of that number in the queue would inherently go down, because there'd be more chance for cars to get out that aren't being seen, because the software doesn't take into account anything else but that intersection as one.
Okay, so the connector road the peer review has identified to be recommended to close, but that's not the current plan. Is there any data for the commercial traffic on the trucks, tankers, or whatever, on what their final destination or the intended destination leaving Park Central is?
Generally, what we do in our traffic studies, we have as part of the analysis a rate that assumes heavy vehicle traffic on the roadway. The general Mass DOT, most towns, they accept what's called 2%, which is 2% of the vehicles on the roadway would inherently be a heavy vehicle, and that's interpreted as that many cars, depending on whatever the volume is. So 2% of 100 is 2 trucks, for instance. That would be on the roadway. But we're talking about, again, the analysis that we do are inherently about the peak hour. So when we're talking about potentially maybe a moving vehicle coming out of the residence, you'd be assuming that there'd be multiple moving vehicles during 1 hour of one day, as opposed to over the course of a day, over the course of a time period where not everybody moves in on the same day, not everybody moves out on the same day, not everybody moves out in the same month. If it's coming to the gas tankers are not going to be on John Bolin Way. Would make no sense for them to be on John Bolin Road. They move out to Flag Road, because they're going for anywhere, mostly back to a highway in order to get back to a refueling station or a refinery.
Wait, excuse
no
me.
questions
Yeah,
on
you got to use the mic, and this gentleman has the floor.
So my follow-up question would be, the accident data that was discussed earlier, that you in fact said the intersection with Flag and Route 9, that number is actually lower and there's accidents on the other side. So that my view would be that it's often that Route 9 East will back up, and then if you do not know what the destination of these commercial traffic is headed for, then in fact that it's possible that if their intended destination is I-90 West or East or Route 9 East, then they in fact would possibly take the flat road and go towards that, because I looked it up in Google that the time distance without traffic between going out onto Route 9 West and then taking a U-turn back to those directions and going through Flat Road to either Route 85 or Route 30 to access Route 9 in those directions, or Route Mass Pike, then that is only about 2 minutes difference. And given that if the Route 9 East backs up very much, then I don't see any reason why any realistic assumption that these other traffic would not take that other route.
And generally, again, we've assumed that'd be a certain amount of the traffic that would take Flag Road in order to get to Route 30 in order to go out east. That was part of our distribution. However, when you talk about the general 360-degree radius around the site and where directions that people could possibly go for things that they would be constantly going to, the data doesn't necessarily warrant that there'd be an excessive amount of traffic going up Flag Road from, for instance, if people are working down in what's a town to the south, Franklin, for instance, they wouldn't be going up Flag Road. They'd be heading out towards 495. So that, when we take into account where we're distributing the traffic, we take into account where the people in Southborough working based on the census data that was filled out by the residents, where they live, where they work.
I don't agree with that, but I would just like the ZBA to consider what I said, and that the real possibility that if you don't close the connector road and allow the left turn, then this is a real possibility, and that we should address that before any approval, or it should be I should really like to see it as a condition somehow addressing this. So I want to move on to the next thing. I probably should put a little bit context in this. I should probably been more engaged in this process, and I have not, but in attending the last couple of meetings, this has been a recurring theme, so I would just like to ask it and have it see it addressed. I would like to read this letter I wrote into the records to Mr. Bartolini and zoning board members, CC Board of Selectmen Planning Board. I am Yan Huang from 75 Flag Road, and I'm deeply concerned that it appears that I, as an abutter, did not receive notice for public hearing on May 27, 2015, in which use variance for Park Central was granted. At first, I thought it must have escaped my notice, but I see many others raising the same issue, so can you please address it with lists of who was sent notification and which dates in which newspaper of general circulation was notice published in? I assume that you know the law better than I do, but here is support for my request. And I'm not going to read it verbatim, but it's just a link to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 10 and Section 11, of which the Section 10 requires the notification. Just the notification. It requires notification in mail and in print of newspaper of general circulation. And I would also like to point out that the party of interest seems to be a lot more than what I believed these meetings would lead me to believe. In the law, it says, the law defines it to be much broader than what I have been under pressure by these meetings. Sincerely, Yang Huang. Thank you.
The thing is that when that project is done, or any project is done, the abutters list are sent to the town office, and the list is checked off on the emails that we've given from the applicant of notifying all of the people. So if your name was on there, it was properly checked off. If your name wasn't on there, that's to do with the town assessor's office. Because they were given a list with all the abutters on there, and Karen, she goes over that list, checks it all through and makes sure everybody and we received, they have to send emails to the people, and we received all the emails, and they were checked off. So apparently, if you didn't. What?
Certified mail.
Mail.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, but
Certified mail.
apparently, your name probably, for some reason, wasn't properly in the assessor's office account, if it did not get done.
Okay, what about the request for just which newspaper and what date was the requirement to actually publish the notice in a newspaper of general circulation?
For the meeting,
Yes, for the public hearing.
it was done for 2 weeks, and, I mean, I forget
Can
the
I
time,
get the
Karen?
date and the
It would have been the
newspaper?
Metro West.
Metro West and the date, please?
I don't have my records with me right now.
Okay, you can send it to
But I
me
could,
later.
you could email me tomorrow.
It was February
Well, let's let her.
14, in 2014, that we had the meeting, so it would have been done 3 weeks before that. So it was done in the end of January.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Kevin Farrington, 58 Flag Road. I have a question about the status of a collector road. I'm assuming collector roads have a fairly rigid definition in the terms of a traffic engineer?
Yeah, it's a federally defined classification. It's nobody in this room, nobody even at the state level. And a collector road is loosely defined as a road that provides both local land access and regional mobility. It's basically the middle ground between a local road and a highway.
Okay, and are there standards around what a collector road should meet in terms of width,
It's how it was
sidewalks?
honestly, it was how it was classified probably 50 years ago.
Sorry, what was
It
that?
was probably how it was classified 50 years ago. I've never heard of a process to successfully lobby to get a functional classification changed. You know, it's an anarchistic way of defining roads, but yeah.
And
it's still
is
in the
Flag
books.
Road your typical collector road in terms
Collector
of?
roads like that all over the place. Edmonds Road being one in Framingham, and one that I've dealt with in the past, there are very similar circumstances.
Yeah, okay. And then I have a question for the board around the left turn access. So I strongly recommend that a condition for approval be no left turn onto Flag Road. But if the board doesn't take that recommendation, does anything that's this board is doing prohibit the selectmen from taking that approach?
No, I don't think the selectmen could do that.
I've been told
I can't speak for the selectmen, I don't know. But I think that with regards to the comments tonight and other nights with regards to left-hand turn, it's clear that there's a concern. Similar concerns that we had coming out of Cumberland Farms and so forth. You know, we have traffic engineers that have come up with an analysis. The peer review analysis was a little bit higher, so we're going with the higher number as far as amount of vehicles going down.
With all due respect, the peer review analysis is dated back in January. The project has been changing continuously back then. At the
Well,
time
the
that
amount of
peer-
units, though, has pretty much stayed the same. I mean, it's not
We're
significantly
not talking about
changed.
units, we're talking about forcing traffic from the office building out onto Flag Road, enabling traffic from Cumberland Farms out onto Flag Road. This mythical 9-acre parcel that cannot be talked about will also be forced out onto Flag Road. None of this was talked about in the peer review study. I'm not even sure it was covered in the DEIR counts, but it was hard to tell from a lot of the diagrams in there.
Again, to give myself credit, it was mentioned in the peer review as a concern.
The extras traffic.
Disconnection. I mean, I think the programming of the actual site is of less concern to me than the potential that the cross connection holds.
So regarding my question about whether there's anything that's limiting the selectmen, who are the road commissioners in town?
You'd have to talk to them. I can't speak for the selectmen or or Karen.
We keep
in the-
hearing
in
that
the
this board has no
DPW.
jurisdiction over Flag Road, and so.
They have the jurisdiction.
Okay. And then how is
There's nothing we can do to prevent them to discussing that. I think, was that kind of your question, or?
From passing it. If the selectmen decide that there should be no left turn from John Boland Road, is there anything that?
There's nothing we can do as a board to
No, but I'll
prevent the
tell you,
selectmen
I mean,
from-
I'll throw out an idea to the developer. I don't know if he'd accept it, but one of the things that, you know, the developer has expressed a concern that it would, if it was restricted to the point where there was no left turn out of it, it was gonna be detrimental to his development. It was gonna harm his development, it was gonna reduce the value of his development, and that's a comment he's made a couple times. He's resisted blocking that off. Well, I mean, this is his statement. I don't wanna speak for the developer, but I've heard it. But some of the talk tonight was about school and bus stops and worried about different traffic increasing during school hours with buses. And how about if we have the developer, if the developer would be interested in restricting that left turn during specific hours of the day? So, in other words, you know, during school hours, maybe early in the morning, during early morning hours when obviously you're dealing with, I've heard numerous stories over the many meetings about children walking to school, biking to school, people walking their children and buses and so forth. How does the developer feel about maybe putting a restriction in our conditions, so no left turn? I mean, I know this is gonna be not something that you wanna hear, but it would appease a lot of concerns, and it would certainly even our peer review.
Well-
So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I understand the reason. And certainly if it was imposed as a condition, we would consider, okay, we would take the position that it's a uneconomic condition because of the impact that it has on the product. On the other hand, okay, we may be able to live with that condition regardless of the impact, if in fact the process ended there. I mean, I'm not going to say we're going to agree to it, because I don't know what other people are going to do when you issue your comprehensive permit regarding the other conditions. You know, if we get assaulted with appeals and other things, well, then I'm going to say, no, we're not going to compromise. But it certainly sounds like a workable compromise to me, and I think Mr. DePietri and I have talked about it. It's a workable compromise if it's part of a end of the process. So.
All right, so that's good. So if we could focus on, my suggestion is maybe early morning, maybe 7 to 9 when the kids are going to school, to restrict that left-hand turn outside of the buses. That may work.
How do you envision that? How would that?
Just a sign.
Sign?
Yeah, just a sign. I mean, it's no different than what we talked about, the sign on Cumberland Farms or the sign at the post office that we talked about. You know, there are plenty, I know people are gonna get up and say, no one's gonna follow signs, people are gonna blow through signs, but you know, let me tell you something, you go through busy intersections all the time, there says no left turn during noon to 3 o'clock, it happens all the time in many cities, and you're subject to fines and traffic tickets because of it. So, I mean, how do stop signs get enforced? I mean, they get enforced when a police officer sees someone breaking the law. It's a suggestion. So I think it's a reasonable suggestion. I mean, I think that if it's abused, I mean, it certainly could be tracked, because there's going to be the developer is going to be required to do traffic studies for how long after the project goes into play?
5 years.
Okay, so there'll be I assume they'll be able to track the increase in traffic, the delta between what's now and what's after the project coming down Flag Road towards Main Street, right?
Yeah, so we're tracking, and I don't have the exact list in front of me, so if I miss an intersection, I'm sorry. But tracking coming out of John Bull and how they turn, tracking basically, I believe most of the intersections that were included as part of the original study, to show what happens during the typical day, all over the types of seasons of the year for the 5 years period after the project is occupied. And that generally, this is usually something that, again, we throw into the MEPA documents for them to also approve through Mass DOT, because they also want to see the monitoring program on their roads as well. So that would be looking at what actually is happening comparative to the baseline study that was done and the counts that we have, not only counts that we have, but the counts, again, that the peer reviewer has as well on the roadway, to show what is the general growth of traffic outside of the project, because there's a growth rate of general traffic, regardless of the product is there, that we can document through the baseline studies that were already done, and then based on the increase of traffic that happens subsequent to that. So whether it's, say, a 1% growth rate naturally, if you add that on to the traffic counts now to what it should be then in the future, how many additional cars are on the roadway based on traffic counts that we do 5 years from now, 4 years from now, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, to show what the increase that the project would have had.
So I want to interject here, and this is part of the passion I'm trying to convey here is I feel like the neighborhood is playing a game of chicken on this project, an all or nothing game. I'm fearful that the neighborhood's going to end up with nothing, and this development's going to go in, because this board in this town does not have the full granting authority on this 40B project. State could overrule, and at that point, there could be nothing on the table. They could just go in as by right as is. So I would stress to the audience to at least consider the reality of the fact that, you know, is getting some safety improvement along Flag Road a worthy consideration compared to getting nothing and the project? I mean, that's the question before you. I don't understand why that's a funny proposition. That is the very real pragmatic reality that's facing the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, the decision could be taken away from us in effect.
And it already has been.
You know, it's serious business at this point. So we're trying to get as much as we can out of the developer to satisfy some of the concerns, because we can only sit through so many more meetings about traffic. We understand and we appreciate everyone's concern, but we're also faced with the reality of the whole 40B law and how, and you know, maybe Mr. Marchand could explain how many rights and what the rights are of a developer in a 40B project.
Mr. Marchand, before you start, when you do this, explain the fact that if this gets appealed, what happens to our regulations and conditions we do? So the residents know that, please.
Again, a developer has a right to appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee under two conditions. One, if the project is denied. Two, if the project is granted, but the developer feels that there are conditions in the comprehensive permit which make the project uneconomic. Uneconomic is a term, and for a rental project, there's a formula to determine what minimum return is considered an economic return. When it goes to the Housing Appeals Committee, and I'm going to defer perhaps to Town Council here, it's a de novo hearing. So whatever concessions that were made or may have been made, or whatever mitigation was agreed to by the developer, is no longer, you can no longer assume that you're going to get that. So that's the risk, and that's why a ZBA's job is so difficult. It's not as black and white as a planning board, which has clearly defined rules and regulations very often for certain projects. And if you have more than 750-foot dead-end road, and you can't get a waiver on that, then the project gets denied. The ZBA has to balance and tries to negotiate what the best deal is. Nobody's ever going to like this project, okay? as a, and I represent, you should be aware, I represent boards. I've worked on 160 of these, but I also represent developers. This is a classic negotiation where neither side is fully satisfied. And you're just trying to negotiate the best alternative. The board, the town unfortunately is 58 units shy of getting to that 10% number. I mean, I've looked at the numbers. This project, if it is approved, would create a situation where the board could deny any comprehensive permit, certainly until 2020, because those numbers are based upon the 2010 census. So that's what makes the ZBA's job really difficult. They're trying to balance. And as Mr. Eagle has said, that's where the board has to use its best judgment. And at a certain point, when a project has gone on for this long, the developer says, I'm not sure we're ever going to make everybody happy. Let's just do a decision, and then we'll go to the next step. And the neighbors will go to the next step, and that will be, neighbors have a right to appeal it to either the land court or Superior Court. So it just extends it out. I mean, it's wonderful when you can get some kind of agreement where neither party is going to be perfectly satisfied, but basically you can live with it.
Mr. Monchon, the one thing that is wrong, with the present thing that we've done on 188 rental units, the numbers that we've gone down and researched, it'll be 2068 before we have to do another 40B project in our town.
Well, I did some
those
analysis.
numbers, did those with our town planner, Jennifer.
Let me just do this quickly, and I know it's late. The 2010 census says that the town of Southborough has 3,433 year-round units. And therefore, to meet that 10%, you'd need to have 355 units. Currently, you have 286. If this project were approved at 180, even though only 25% or 45 of the units are affordable, the state allows you to count all 180 units. That would bring you to 466 units, and you'd be at 13.57%. Now, and again, direct neighbors don't care about the overall town. This is clearly 40B, every project I work on. It's not the neighbor 5 miles away who cares, it's the neighbor right next door because you're the ones who are impacted. But the town will care about these numbers because there are a lot of other neighborhoods who say, hey, let's get to 10%. So what I did is I took a look at what your 2020 census might be like. So I took the 2010 of 3,433. I added 466. That's the most conservative position I could take because some of those may have already been included in the 2010. And then I took a look at your housing production plan, and it seemed that there are not a lot of single-family permits issued in Southborough each year. So I made an assumption on that, and I looked at that plan really quickly before tonight's meeting, and I said an average of 15, which seemed really low. That's 150, and you also have the 40A project, which I'm not involved with because I'm a 40B advisor, of 139 units. That would bring the total year-round units to 4,188. But you would still have, without approving any other comprehensive permit project other than this one, 466 units or 11.13%. Now in the interim, you can approve, if there's a 40B project that comes along that the board and town finds acceptable, you can always approve it. So you could build up, for example, I'm working on a project in Burlington where Burlington has met its 10%, but there's a proposal that they like by a good developer, a rental project. They're going to approve it because they want to get money in the bank, money in that SHI bank. So The good news is that this project would put you in a control position in terms of your 40B situation.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Jeremy Travens, 59 Flag Road. So, assuming the project goes forward, there's going to be 4 to 5 years of construction going on. Is there, either through a concession from Mr. DiPietri or how this board proposes in contingencies to the project being approved, that we can limit or avoid construction vehicles coming down Flag, let's say, not having a left turn at all?
We discussed
Yeah, we've already discussed
Sorry,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's in a condition already.
Great, okay, thank you, great. The traffic study that will follow up, I assume, when the last unit has gone in and from 5 years at that point, what is the outcome of that? I missed what the ramifications of it is rather than just the study itself. Is there anything tied to that where if there is a certain amount of traffic that is built up that is way beyond what was projected, then at that point, the left-hand turn would be taken out, or something to that effect, or there's a gate put down during certain hours, something that's built into ramifications of that? Oh, sorry.
Sam, I mean, typical traffic monitoring agreements kind of, if it exceeds a certain benchmark, it reopens up the possibility for mitigation.
Okay.
Generally, through the MIPA process, I believe the threshold is a 10% increase. Jason?
10% beyond what was predicted.
Yeah.
So it just opens up, everything's already done, the project's in, I'm trying to understand what the outcome of that could be. What is what recourse do we have at that point? Unless it's built in the front end.
Change that has to get.
Yeah, so we would have to resubmit through MIPA, and through that has to go again to the town, to Mass DOT, through whatever increase there was through traffic and what the thresholds were, depending on which year it is, and the town has the right to then go through and ask of more mitigation and or same as the state.
Right.
That's the way, the layman's term definition of it.
So that my request be, is there something that could be built in as a contingency, the project being completed based upon that this board, I don't know if you have the power to do that, where that would be built in as if it exceeds a certain amount upfront, then the left-hand turn would be taken out.
Aldo, is that a condition we?
Yeah. So, if traffic exceeds a certain amount, if traffic exceeds a certain amount, when everything is said and done, can there be a contingency built in, or it's part of the approval process, the conditions that at that point, if it exceeds, the ramification is that the left-hand turn is closed down?
Or
something
some form of mitigation.
To that effect, there's something more solid remediation, because I don't hear anything other than a discussion at
Most
this
of
point.
the time, you see it as monetary. It's a monetary penalty that's.
I think it can be.
The board can put any condition it wants in general, any condition it wants. The applicant can appeal and make an argument that it makes the project uneconomic. So it would end up, if you had a condition that said, if the actual, once the project is built, and after the monitoring has been done, if the level, or if it's clear that it creates a public safety issue, then whatever.
Right.
That could be a condition,
It
but
could,
it could also be appealed.
Yeah, and everything that Mr. Marchand said is correct. These safety issues have got to elevate. I think I've said this several times. It has to elevate to somewhat of a higher degree than normal, but it is a defense. And if there is a basis to put these conditions in, and it's approved and it's appealed, then respectfully, we know how to defend those. So you try to work this out at this level. The other thing that I've heard a lot about is Flag Road, who has control over what. In a standard contemporary project 40A, you can compel a developer to enhance egress to a certain level and mitigate and pay money or whatever, exaction fees. You are less apt or able to do that with a 40B unless, again, there is a compelling safety need. But in neither case, either a 40A or a 40B, can you compel the developer to rebuild public ways. He's not required to enhance roads as they exist. So it then falls upon, to an extent, the town to deal with the impact down the road, both literally and figuratively, as to flag to deal with the issue. The Board of Selectmen, I think some individuals said road commissioners. That's actually a historical analysis of what selectmen were, but selectmen are in control of public ways as the chief executive authority. So they have some ability to deal with the issue, and I understand that the selectmen are dealing with the issue in conjunction with all of the input that has been put in to this board and before them. So that's basically the overview, is how far can it go and how much can be defended based upon the public safety issues.
Mr. Cipriano, I want to correct you on one issue. Mr. DePietri has agreed to do any work on Flag Road that the selectmen want.
No, I haven't.
Say it again?
No,
Wait a
listen.
minute.
No, I haven't.
I thought
No.
back when we sent it to Flag Road,
No.
that you had agreed.
No, I didn't. I said I would help contribute, and I did not.
Say it
put
again. State it,
I would
please.
help contribute. I said I would take down some trees, and I already paid for the traffic study. I never said I would do all the work.
All right? But he
Well-
said that he
well,
would
well, Mr. Bartley-
help the town do it.
Good. Now, Mr. Bartley, I'm glad that I'm not being corrected
All right.
by you.
I just worded it the wrong way. But he
David?
did say he would work with the town.
So could I, well, one more.
Excuse me, just.
This is on that point. 40B regs are clear. The developer is not responsible for correcting an existing condition that creates a problem. Developers have been asked in the past, and very often will agree, to contribute a fair share towards correcting that problem. And the fair share is calculated by taking a look at the existing traffic on that road and finding out what percentage of the total combined traffic between the, including the existing traffic and the newly generated traffic, the developer would contribute. It's a very, it's a relatively simple formula. But again, the developer cannot take land, is not going to get in the middle of taking away this 250-year-old stone wall. That's going to rest with the Board of Selectmen.
And I got to add to that point is that is essentially what is put out there in that traffic safety study of a appropriate fair share, framework to have that conversation.
Last quick question. So a no left turn onto Flag Road, there's a perceived economic impact to the project. Has that already been looked at? Has that already been reviewed? There's an appeals process around that you talked about, right? Is that something we already know up front here, or not? And I think it should be understood.
Well, the developers indicated that it would be a severe economic hardship.
Right.
So we can only go by the, now,
and
that's something that
yeah.
we can agree with them or we can disagree with them, but that's how they feel. So in their mind, I believe, if we denied the project, they would use that as a
right. So I'm understanding.
That would be debated. That would be argued at the Housing Appeals Committee.
So, but rather than wait to get to all that process, can we understand and get numbers and see that? Is there a way to mock that up in the front end here and get that done? That's my question. It's not traffic, but it's related.
It is traffic, and that is the point I'm trying to convey to all of you. You have 2 traffic engineers who are telling you that this is not going to rise to the point of being a justifiable denying point.
Well, I would argue that the economic impact is not also.
Excuse me, you don't have a microphone.
Sorry.
All right, so you've made your point.
Okay.
All right.
No, but I do like the point that if there's going to be a continued 5-year study and it shows significantly adverse to what was originally stated, then, we could put in conditions that would, remedy that.
Well, that's something we could talk about.
I'm sorry to go long, but I do hear the concern, the threat of where this could go eventually. If we just keep bouncing back and forth, then why not look at some of the stuff up front if it hadn't? That's my only point. I wish we could do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Very quick.
No. Let me just say, it's now 11 o'clock. With all due respect to you and Mr. Green, I think that you've had numerous attempts. And you've had.
This is a follow-up to this. Please allow me 30 seconds.
I will give you 30, but I'm going to ask that.
Time my 30 seconds.
We only have a couple more minutes. I really want to wrap this up. I think the lights are going to go out at 11.
That's fine. Time my 30 seconds. Very simply, 2 things. One, a plea to Mr. DePietri. as a resident of this town, you can see the strife. This site had original access on Park Central. It had one way in and out. It didn't go anywhere else, just like the project up the street in Westboro has it. There is no economic site. Your original site went on Park Central only. Please consider not making the left. It doesn't have an impact. For the board, I keep hearing about this, and I hear this back and forth. If we deny this, there was already access. The court, the findings of this, I'm willing to take that bet. I bet most of the residents are. There is no legal standing. It's not required. There is no economic that can be proved because the original housing on this road was from Park Central on 9. Please have the chutzpah, if you know the word, to stand up for the town and the rights of what we are. Mr. DePietri, please forget the traffic studies. You live here. These are your residents. These are your neighbors. This is your family that uses this road. There's enough concern. It shouldn't have enough impact on this project. This project is going to sell regardless. This is Southborough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a very quick follow-up. Mr. Marchand, I disagree with you. I believe that the neighbors near and far really care about this project. These folks are from all over the place. They're not just from the neighborhood. You mentioned that 40A and 40B aren't the same. We are absolutely treating it as a 40B project. Mr. DePietri, there's no way he can claim that this is an uneconomic project for him. I mean, if you estimate 129 units at 500K at $65 million, 180 at approximately 250K is another $60 million. So you're looking at a $125 million project at the very least. He bought the land for $3 million. I'd love to see him prove that it's uneconomic. There is no reason that we can't close Flag Road. There is absolutely no reason not to. A sign is not going to do it. So, again, we don't need to be ridiculous with this, and we do not need to allow it to happen. Let them fight it, let them call it uneconomic, and let them prove it. Thank you.
Okay, this is going to be the last.
I actually have a question, and I think we've gone, I think we're just going to keep cycling
Yeah, I mean, do you
through
have anything
everyone.
new? Because you're the last person that's going to speak.
No,
oh, I'm
let
sorry.
Selectman
I'm
Shea.
sorry.
I would like clarification on the whole process of approving with conditions. In my layman reading of the law, it says that the applicant has to present evidence that is uneconomical. So that it seems to me that
This has already been discussed.
It's been discussed.
Right.
Let me finish my thought. That they should. My layman reading is that they should present evidence to the board such that they wouldn't impose the condition before the appeal, or is it just at the appeals? Thank you.
The developer doesn't have to, that would be an appeal process by the developer if he chooses to go that route.
Yes.
I promise this is new.
Okay, and you're going to be the last speaker.
I don't know that
ma'am,
this-
there won't be, excuse me, this will be the last speaker of the evening.
I don't know
So you
that
could sit
this
down.
question is going to be answered tonight, but I just request that you look into it. And it deals with Park Central Drive and making Park Central Drive a one-way street. And I fully recognize that Park Central Drive is a private road, it's not public. But the way that the town code is written, under Chapter 207, Vehicles and Traffic, it provides a definition for a street of a highway as every way open to the use of the public for purposes of travel. It doesn't distinguish between public road, private road. And later on in that chapter, it provides for a designation of one-way streets, and it provides a schedule that lists all the one-way streets. And for my discussion with the DPW superintendent, it is the Board of Selectmen that add streets to that schedule. So my question to you is, even though Park Central Drive is a private road, does the Board of Selectmen still need the approval to make Park Central Drive a one-way road?
I don't know. Did Aldo?
I think
I
that
don't know if it'll be answered tonight, but I just request that you look into it.
I think that, the major thing is Mr. Marchand, because of the 40B project.
Well, let Al.
Step down and go first.
It's a point that the selectman just mentioned to me. It could be construed to be a private way in public use, but I think we would have to have some form of cooperation from Mr. DePietri and his counsel on the interpretation and the imposition of that restriction.
On which road?
Park Central.
On Park Central Drive.
That's correct.
See, the thing is, and I don't know if everybody realizes it, The major issue on Park Central Drive is by DOT. And they've made this issue 15 years ago stating that they're only allowed so many square feet of building on that site to go out on that exit. And when we did Cumberland Farms and put the road up in there, that was something that came up and was a major issue too.
So this is my point, though. If it's the Board of Selectmen that determine the one-way streets in town, not DOT, then that request should be made to the Board of Selectmen for that change in the traffic pattern.
Which way
That's
would
all
you
right.
make it
If
one
it's a
way?
change to the curbing of the road, it's still a DOT issue. If you're gonna make it physically one way, you have to adjust curb, that comes back to an access permit at MassDOT.
I don't understand where you would make it.
You want to help?
Right. So, yeah, so that makes sense.
I don't know.
Okay.
On the, can I ask like one summary question on traffic?
Yeah.
It'd be a quick one for you, Jason. So, you know, basically have a somewhat final, I guess we have a final plan here currently.
Yes.
Correct.
Is there anything, I don't know if you've had a chance to review it, from the last time you made, you know, comments on your peer review to now, is there anything substantially different or of concern to yours in regards to traffic with the project? As a general summary,
Now, are you talking specifically about the site plan itself or just the general impact of
the
traffic?
site plan itself, with, now that we've got a final site plan and where it was maybe.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen a final site plan since 2015, so I can't comment on that.
So maybe could, you know, is it possible to have this final one reviewed, and if there's
Well,
any?
there's no issue. The only issue is the 3 units that were removed.
Yeah, I
And
don't
the
think it's gonna
15
affect
feet.
traffic.
Well, that's
And
a
the
fine enough, well,
15
is that's a fine enough answer for me?
I
Is
made
it-
comments of the site plan in our 2015 review, to the extent.
So if
from
it's
what I've
based
heard,
on the same amount of units, then you're, in
Less
general,
units
this
now
is.
than it was.
So there were comments germane to the site plan, in connection, access. Some of those have not actually had the conversation. The connection was the biggest one there. In terms of traffic impact, and this is my summary point on this, there are, in my mind, legitimate safety concerns on Flag Road. I've been out there, talked to neighbors who were fearful of walking out of their driveway. There are school children walking out there. There's no pedestrian refuge. There is an issue. I am not convinced, though, of the sophistication of the review process amongst 40Bs that's going to carry through. My personal opinion is take what you can get now and mitigate this problem, because it is a problem. You risk getting nothing except more traffic if this game of chicken goes much further.
And you did make some comments from the last time you spoke to us that there's some other ways to mitigate traffic concerns on Flag and Deerfoot. I remember you said maybe like striping the road. You know,
Our
so
safety
there was-
study lays out what I think is a appropriate approach. Now,
Right.
that raises other issues about the, scenic character of the road, and I understand those issues, but my biggest concern is safety and what gets people killed, and pedestrians walking on a road with no refuge, with cars at 35 miles an hour. That is a situation that I'm concerned with.
Yeah,
There's no safety, there's no record of history, there's no, fatal accidents out there that someone can point to and say, look, here's the issue. And that's why I fear if this goes to litigation, that, you don't have a concrete enough case that that's gonna prevail.
Okay, thank you.
Just one, and traffic's not my area, but I just realized on another project I'm working on, there are speed bumps, which do create an issue in terms of snow plowing. Speed humps are still slow people down, but you can plow them. Yeah, you can have them, and they work. Maybe not the first time you realize it's there, but you remember.
They do work. Forget about your concerns about scenic and maintenance notwithstanding, and there are ways to mitigate them. They do slow traffic down to a speed where pedestrians will not be killed if they get struck.
I'm going to make a comment to both of you consultants on that. Under the new design, which is happening in different states, of the grinding capacity on the roads, instead of having yellow lanes in the middle of the roads, they put the grindings down. And instead of putting speed bumps, they put the grindings across.
Rumble strips?
Yes, the rumble strips.
Does
and it's
nothing to actually slow the speed of cars.
It's becoming a major issue everywhere right now.
Listen, the only way you're gonna slow cars is to physically impede them.
Yeah, but
That's just the plain reality.
The rumble thing's becoming a major issue in a lot of places.
They don't slow cars. They
What?
they cause noise.
But does it help at all?
If you, not really, no.
No,
No.
not really. And what you were suggesting for the center of the road, what usually happens is you typically see the rumble strip on the outside of the road, is when people usually hit the rumble strip, they assume they need to turn a certain direction. When they're in the middle of the road, because you don't usually see those often, like the state of Vermont has them in the middle of the road everywhere actually right now.
Maine does too
Is
now.
generally you also, again, turn that same direction, which now means you're now in the other lane of traffic. The center of the road, Vermont, I think, has already been talking about actually trying
It
to get rid of
doesn't,
them.
so it doesn't
For the
really
middle of the
help
road.
then.
Okay, so, thank you. So I would like to,
I'm gonna make a motion.
okay.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion to continue the public hearing until Monday night at 7 o'clock here. And the discussion will be, as far as the traffic issue is gone, the discussion will be on the decision and getting that written up and done. Now, Joe cannot be here on Monday, but we can televise it and he'll be able to review it that way after.
Monday.
What? We're going to write the conditions on the decision and discuss them and write them. We have a form already filled out.
Right.
I thought I heard earlier you were continuing it till Wednesday.
Yeah, I thought,
Well, we have the meeting on Wednesday night, which we have Foster O'Neill going to be coming to and everything, but we need to get this decision stuff written and done.
Well, do you want to have it Wednesday? Would that give you more?
No, I think,
Wanna do
No, we'd
Monday?
rather have it tomorrow. Tonight would have been good.
I know, a little late. All right, so do you want to?
Monday during the day, there's something going on in here, so we can't use the room. Otherwise, we'd do it during the day.
So you wanna
But
go
Monday
Monday?
evening, we have the room available for us to do it.
Excuse me, ma'am.
We have
All right,
So
what time
can-
Monday?
7 o'clock.
Yes, yes.
Can I understand what the zoning board of appeals is going to do Monday? Is it to walk through for the first time the proposed decision in a public hearing?
Yes, we have not closed the public hearing
Correct,
yet.
I know that.
Yes.
You're going to walk through that in public session, go through the conditions, discuss the conditions, get further citizen input on the conditions, and at some subsequent point, when you've exhausted all information and received all information, you close the public hearing.
Correct.
No. We're going to do, wait a minute, I'm just correcting, we're not happening on Monday night. We're going to wait until Wednesday night when we receive the final approval from Foster O'Neill on the drawings, which we've just received, and everything they say is right and proper, so we accept that and then close the public hearing that night with those issues.
We don't
when
have to
we've
wait.
exhausted all
No,
information.
Lee, we don't have to wait for the Foster O'Neill to approve.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't.
That is proper.
No, we don't.
need to, Mr. Monchant, would you correct me? We need to approve these plans, and until Foster O'Neill okays them, and Foster O'Neill will be here Wednesday night with full approval for us.
you could accept them subject to
Right.
the Fuss and O'Neill comments. Once again, as Mr. Marchand pointed out, if it requires substantial changes, that's at our risk. We would have to come back to
Right,
the
similar
board.
to conservation.
Well, that would be a whole different thing that would change on Wednesday. If that happened on Wednesday, we would know.
Right. The issue is that you can close the public hearing after you have received all the information that you need. We think that, other than your comments on those plans, we have nothing further to add. And, you know, I'm not going to agree to too many further extensions of the public hearing,
When's it up?
because we're done. I mean, that's it. You have the information, you've heard from the public, you know what the public wants, you know why they want it, okay? You know what we propose, and it's really now your turn to make a decision. And then
Right.
we can decide if we can live with it, and they can decide if they can live with it.
Well, the thing is, that's the issue, is what I'm saying is that Monday night, we meet and we discuss the conditions and get them set up, and then Wednesday night, we meet again, and like Mr. Cipriano says, Wednesday night, that's it, it's done and over with.
Well, I didn't say.
No,
Mr. Cipriano never said that Wednesday night, it's done and over with.
Hopefully, it'll be close.
All right, okay.
So
Mr.
Monday-
Chairman,
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I've been waiting since November of 2014 to go over these drainage calculations. I got the plan yesterday. Now you're telling me you're going to close the hearing on Wednesday? That's not right.
We're not,
Yes.
You're working with his...
No, no, no. Going to
No, it
happen.
isn't.
Wait.
You can say yes all you want, I'm done.
Wait, Jack. We haven't closed the public hearing. You have every right to make a comment next week at the Monday hearing if you have specific concerns about your drainage, if you have a chance to have your engineer look at it. I mean, I think that's more than reasonable.
I think so too, but I've waited a long time for these. At my own expense, I got my engineer to look at it, and Bill's been courteous enough to say that he'll meet with me, and now all of a sudden it's Monday?
Our engineer got it pretty well done today.
Our engineer got it today.
They got it, what?
They got it today.
No, they didn't. They got it 2
They
days
got
ago.
it today. The plan came out at 7:07 on Monday.
They got it emailed to them Monday.
Monday, they got
the
it
hard copy
emailed,
today.
and they've been reviewing
Hard
it.
copy
Monday
today.
at 7 o'clock,
2
Lee,
days.
come on.
They reviewed it all day Tuesday.
You know, I've been pretty
and all day
reasonable here,
today.
but this is,
So I made the motion to continue it to Monday at 7 o'clock.
Respectfully, please.
I second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
You seconded it?
I seconded that, yes.
Okay, no discussion.
Respectfully.
All right? Request, all in favor?
All right, all in favor of,
Okay.
let's continue. Okay, now,
And the other thing, just for informational, that our next meeting will be Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Park Central will be at 7:30 because we have Mr. Cipriano before that.
Okay, so I have to post 48 hours in advance. So if you, I'll need to know early Monday morning, if not Friday, what the discussion will be for the 24th. I can't wait till the evening of the
Going to-
22nd.
We just told you what it is. I made the motion, Karen.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be,
All right,
it'll
hold
be
on.
Monday.
7 o'clock is going to be with Mr. Cipriano.
Yep, and 7:30 will
At
be.
7:30 is going to be Park Central.
All right, all right,
Wednesday.
no, no,
With,
no. Go
wait a
back-
minute,
Yeah.
Park Central with Foster O'Neill Consultants.
No, go back to the dates. 7:22
Okay,
at 7 PM.
not 7:22.
I mean 8:22.
8:22. It'll be at 7 o'clock? We're gonna do 7 o'clock on Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. And discussion
then-
is what?
That's going to be the discussion of conditions.
Conditions, okay.
And then on Wednesday, it'll be a 7 o'clock,
24, 7.
With Mr. Cipriano.
Oh,
no, right,
well, we
Yeah.
got the
And
executive,
at 7:30 with Park Central.
right.
7
With
PM.
discussions on the engineering from
Vote on the
Foster
minutes.
O'Neill,
7:30 is
Park Central.
Park Central, and then Fuss and O'Neill is what time?
Discussion of, they'll be,
It'll be all at the
Oh,
same
They'll be
that's all
with
the
us.
same, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
all right.
and the final decision on the project.
Now, do we,
I'll be here Monday night, I guess.
I also make a motion that we recess.
wait,
We adjourn.
before we do that,
Go ahead.
do we need to extend, when's the extension of the deadline?
31st.
August 31st.
August 31st?
No, we don't have to do that yet.
Okay, all right, we can wait. All right,
Something-
you've made a motion?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Do we,
Any second?
I'll second the adjournment.
Any discussion?
No discussion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing is now closed for the evening.
Yeah, you'll be have to get it home.